Mic check. 1, 2, 3.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, we hear you.
All right. Good evening, 2020 virus-free virtual clinic universe. Thanks so much for being with us on another Friday evening edition of the virus-free virtual clinics. My name is Daniel Young. Got Tuta Salam here with me. Say hi, Tuta.
Hey, world. How y'all doing?
Tuta and I put this kind of session together. We also have Brandon Cruz here with us, helping facilitate and moderate. He didn't put any work into the session. I just want to make sure that's real clear to everybody. But he's going to be here anyway, and we appreciate that. Again, thanks so much, everyone, just for continuing to engage, continuing to come back. We appreciate it. Again, we're going to talk about punt coverage, really, and then also a little bit of time on KCI because we had some requests for that. And really the meat of the conversation is going to revolve around how, as a crew, we cover punts. And I think it's always valuable when we can provide a little context for our learning. And the context tonight is basically that punt plays are really stinking hard. And not only is that the context for our conversation, but also that's kind of the motivation for putting this session together. When you think about 22 players or 11 matchups spread across, anywhere from 40 to 80 yards of the football field, it just becomes a really difficult play to officiate as a crew with players spread out all over the place. And then you combine that with the idea, you think about just to use really round numbers. If we have 200 scrimmage downs in a play, in a game rather, we have to have 20 punts just to have 10% of the plays that we officiate be punts. So you take the fact that they're spread out everywhere and combine it with the fact that we just don't get to work these plays nearly as often. And then you also add the idea that I don't know if two punts have ever evolved in the exact same way. So really unique plays. And then, we go to spring practices and scrimmages in the fall also, and nobody goes live on punts, right? So all of these factors combine to make a really, really challenging play to officiate. But by the way, the expectation for us as a crew doesn't change, right? The standard is still excellence. So if you think of us as a kind of a single organization, how do we organizationally continue to develop in this area and get better? And I think tonight is a big way, right? By continuing to pursue education, by looking at a lot of plays, and ultimately by having conversation within our individual crews about how we're going to cover given punts, right? And I think that's how we grow and continue to work through this. So that's what we're doing tonight. Tuta, let's go ahead and get started, man. Let's cue up our first play. If there's anything you want to add before we get going.
Yes, I do. I want to add, before we even go into any of that, I want to maybe cover our pre-snap positioning and some of our initial keys that we would look at. So if you don't mind, I'd like to do that first.
Great idea.
But to echo what you're saying, Daniel, punts are just crazy. And we had, obviously putting this thing together, we had a lot of spirited discussions, should I say, about who's supposed to be doing what, when, and where. So it's just to reiterate what you're saying. We need to watch film. That's really the only way that we're going to continue to grow in this area and to get better in this area is to watch a lot of film. Okay, let's get into pre-snap initial keys first, and then we'll get into some positioning. So we learned from Walt Anderson, this had to be maybe 5 or 6 years ago. He actually said, you know what? Teams are starting to spread out a lot on this field, and it's very difficult to use just simple traditional pre-snap keys that we normally use on scrimmage downs. We need to figure this out to make sure we have actual coverage on all of these players. So the 4 in the back, we're going to ignore them for right now. Obviously, let's pretend that the field judge and side judge is at the top. So this player, the wide receiver here, would be from the field judge perspective. That is a very ugly arrow, and I'm going to stop trying to draw arrows. This player here would be the line judge's initial key. The referee would go to the right guard. The umpire would focus on the snapper, center, whatever you want to call him. The center judge would focus on the left guard. The headline judge would focus on the left tackle, and the side judge would focus on the last man on the line of scrimmage. What that does is it gives us 7 players all covered by an official on the field. So that's the beauty of what we do there. And obviously the back judge is just back there squinting, acting like he can't see anything because he's staring into the sun.
That's right. That's right. It's
so
very
that is what we're going to key on initially at the snap. As the play develops, obviously, we're going to change a lot. We're going to change a lot of our visual mechanics because the play just dictates the way that we work. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll talk about positioning. Let me clear this foolishness off. Stick with me. I know these players are kind of small, but here is our side judge, and we pretended that the field judge is at the top. This is our field judge. What we want to do, the mechanics manual tells us no less than 5 yards behind the returner. I would strongly suggest you get as deep as you need to get to be able to officiate the play without moving until the returner starts actually going upfield. Personally, I get 15 yards behind the returner. And some of you may think, wow, that is crazy. That's way too deep. But I promise you, if you start 15 yards back, you should never have to move until that return starts going upfield. And you'll be able to watch, see the blocks that you're responsible for and have the returner in your peripheral vision to kind of judge and gauge where he is. So that's initial positioning. And Daniel, I'll let you talk about the back judge in terms of initial positioning, and then we'll roll from there. We'll get into some plays from there.
Yeah, let me just speak to the back judge real quick, and then Tuta, if we could just go back to that last slide and just mention any kind of distinctions between 7-man. I think it'll be really quick over here down to the bottom of the screen, where if we don't have a center judge helping on that. So, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna totally make this up then. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be making this up. I would say that the umpire would start here, and then I would say that the referee still starts on the right guard. And I'm willing to be corrected if y'all think that's not a good idea. If we don't have a center judge, just tell the umpire, look at another dude.
Yeah. I agree. I don't know if Brandon has anything to add, but I think that just makes sense. The umpire just picks up that guard to the center judge's side.
Yeah, I agree too.
Yeah, so agree, man. This idea, this initial keys, and everybody taking ownership of their guy was, and I tend to go overboard sometimes, but was transformational, I think, for a lot of crews and for me. So really good stuff to start with. Real simple. Back judge, when we have a single returner back there with us, we're going to get about 2 yards outside on the wider side of the field, right? So in this situation, we can tell that the wider side is over here. So we're going to be, if we're looking back this way, on the right shoulder of the returner, 2 yards wide, about 7 yards deep. When we have 2 returners, and we'll see some plays like that tonight, we're going to just split those guys and wait for one of them to declare themselves as the guy who's going to receive the punt. But yeah, we'll start 2 wide, 7 deep, and we're going to try to maintain that orientation to the returner throughout the kick. It's virtually impossible unless it's kicked right to him, but that's what we're going to work to do to try to keep that same kind of angle. And we'll talk about why that's beneficial for us as we work through some plays.
All right. Play number 1. Let's go.
Let's get it. Tuta, while you do that, I'm going to queue up a poll for us, and we can just start watching the play.
Okay, good. So for the poll that Daniel was bringing up, is beneficial for us to see this angle, the end zone angle behind the kicking team, to understand how to answer the question. And the action is on the left side of the screen in this angle.
So we're watching B number 10 right there around the 45-yard line, correct, Tuta?
Yep, B10. He's all the way on the right side on the end zone angle behind the receiving team. So the question we're asking is, at what point in time should the head linesman, or headline judge, excuse me, at what point in time should the headline judge pick up B10?
Let it play a few more times, let everybody get a really good idea about what we're asking. And we're asking, we're going to see this potential blindside block. Then don't get a great view of it here on the line feed, but on the wide angle and the end zone, get a really good view of it. Potentially setting up, doesn't end up materializing, but clearly that's a block we need to be prepared to officiate. So we just interested in when or if the headline judge should pick that up right there, the 45. Okay, so let's do this, let's keep the poll live in case anybody hasn't had an opportunity to respond, but let's go ahead and start working through this visually from the headline judge perspective.
Okay, you want to go or you want me to do it?
I'll start. So this is a really good angle for us. Now, remember we talked about these initial keys and the headline judge having the second guy in, but Tuta made the point really clear, like immediately we're almost going to get off that and start to officiate an area of responsibility. Now we have a return, so we're looking for blocks in front of the returner, but we have to have that awareness that the back judge is working from the inside out, that the side judge is coming down. He has the spot. However, he's going to be looking for threats in front of the runner also, especially right now. But we're really going to need the headline judge to pick up this potential BSB, because what we're going to see is that block is going to, if you call it a block, that contact is going to occur very close to the time that the runner goes out of bounds, which is going to grab some of the side judge's attention. So right about now, he's going to go into chase mode with number 88, and that's when we really think that the headline judge wants to address his attention that way, because we have a player going upstream or carrying a brick in his hand, right? Whichever kind of cliche that's beneficial, but still a cliche that you want to use. And we just have to start officiating him before he makes that block, right? Because if he decleats this guy with a really big blindside block and we're not officiating him prior to that point, what we're going to see is an explosion, and then we're going to try to piece things together. Whereas if we're watching him work towards him, all of this is gonna happen in a little bit slower pace, and we're going to be able to process.
And not only that, we want to make sure that we know if there's a potential for illegal block in the back on number 88. If 88 slows down and he picks up speed, we could have a block in the back there.
Yeah,
also, just go ahead, Daniel. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's probably what we're thinking initially, right? Looking
Correct.
for an IBB threat.
Correct.
Go ahead.
So then, from the end zone view behind the receiving team, we can tell that the center judge has a really good look at B10 as well. And I know we have a lot of people that work 7-person mechanics. If we're working 7-person mechanics, there is no center judge there. So that just really illuminates the importance of the headline judge picking up that action.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about first of all, there was a good question talking about line of scrimmage officials working the fair catch signal. And Daniel, as somebody who works the back judge position quite regularly, talk to us about what help you need from other officials working a fair catch signal.
Well, when it's one guy like this, one returner, I don't really need any help at all.
That's right. I knew your answer would be that. In other words, let's get our line of scrimmage people working, in their areas of responsibility. These plays are so hard. We don't need 2 or 3 sets of eyes working one person, potentially give it a fair catch signal. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. Yes, I agree with that.
Not only that, that is way too far for the line of scrimmage official to be looking. If they're looking at that, then they're looking through like 10 different sets of players that could be potential for fouls. We definitely don't need that. And if the back judge can't see a fair catch signal with one returner, then the back judge probably shouldn't be working that game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, way to just go in soft too. Thanks. I appreciate that. No.
Tell us how you really feel.
Own your position is the point. Okay, so now talk about the headline judge's progression on this. The question is, okay, wait, why wouldn't he be right on the first initial block, between him and A88, B10 and A88? So talk about that.
Oh, you mean the initial when they first came together?
Right. One of the options in the poll was when B10 and A88 first come together.
Ah, okay. Well, the reason is because that action sets up very late and it's very near the line of scrimmage. And we would expect that the referee and center judge will work action at the line of scrimmage, and we would want the headline judge and the line judge to work deeper down the field towards the returner. We don't want them to stay working action at the line of scrimmage after the players start going downfield.
Yeah, and that's the theme, I think, of these first 2 plays for the line of scrimmage officials out there with us tonight, is taking ownership, like Brandon said, of working those blocks. Our deep wings are going to have those first blocks that occur around the returner, and then those next set of blocks that set up. Really want the line of not so early that you're seeing fair catch signals, because that means the ball's still in the air. But once we have a return setting up, those second, not those initial ones, but that next set of blocks that starts to mesh together, that's where we want your eyes getting downfield. So ready to move on to the next video?
Yes, let's go for it.
Oh, I guess that's me. Sorry. Oh, you got
it. No,
okay.
I got it. So no poll associated this time, just some good old-fashioned football.
So as you watch film too, this is for everybody out here in VBC land. When you watch film, be very critical of yourself and figure out what is it that I can do better to help the crew. Even if absolutely nothing happened on the play, figure out, can I see this action? Can I see that action? Did I move well enough? And be very critical of yourself and really try to figure out what is it that we can all do better to help the crew. And as you watch these plays, you can start noticing small things that can be done differently to potentially work the play in a better way and to have better coverage on the play.
Such a great point. Such a great point. There's, you can watch all the film in the world and kind of pat yourself on the back there. But in terms of growth, if you don't do it with a sense of self-awareness and just transparency with yourself about, and for me, usually it's about, where was I looking, right? Did I see that? Judgment's always going to be something we're trying to hone. But what's really critical is, where was I looking at this point in the play? And was that the right place for me to be looking? And sometimes you can tell on film, but sometimes it's about kind of putting yourself back in that place. And that's why it's so important to do this on a regular basis, to just be very honest with yourself. You know what? I was looking somewhere else, and that's where I needed to be. If you're not willing to go to that place and kind of dig into that uncomfortableness, you're gonna inhibit your growth. So great point from Tuta. All right, let's check this out. We've got a clear and obvious blindside block right here at the 30-yard line of the return team. Looks like the back judge has a flag down, and I think just a great spot for the back judge's eyes to be looking through the returner, looking upfield, sees this threat setting up as it starts to develop. Then we're going to have a secondary, I don't know if secondary is the right word, but we're going to have another potential blindside block set up for us. If we're looking at the screen right now, over here on the right side, a little bit later in the return,
at the
right
numbers.
around here, about the numbers about the 35-yard line. So what we're really interested in is who's going to help us see this block, and well, that's it really. Who's gonna officiate this block?
Hey guys, one point real quick before you break this down a little bit further. Don't you think, and I think we've all been on the same, had this experience, we get a nice call here by the back judge for the blindside block, and then we really just kind of fast forward to the next play where there's a lot more to break down about this play. And even a grader, if you're in a conference with with graders and evaluators, might just look at the foul that's called because it's on our game report and say, yep, correct call, back judge. But we're leaving so much material and potential self-improvement on the table if we don't address the rest of the play.
Right. And that's what I was attempting to say, Brandon. You said it much more eloquently than I did. Yes. Because like you're saying, exactly, we have a flag down on this play. So it's easy just to go to the grades when our grades come out on Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day they come out, and say, oh, correct call, good. Let's move on to the next play. Well, no, there's a whole lot more that we need to talk about on this play, especially on this play, because this was one where we happened to also miss another foul for illegal blindside block at the 38-yard line. So now we need to figure out how can we see that. So go ahead, Daniel. I think you were gonna get started.
Yeah, I'll start. I guess the team in red didn't get the memo. This is probably week one that blindside blocks were illegal. But the first one, and to Brandon's point, not just from a film perspective, but let's take it to the same point live on film. Okay, I've got this blindside block. Now let's look for our next threat. Let's continue to officiate. But this will be a great view for us right here on this reverse end zone camera. And what we're going to see, very similar to that first play, is that this is a great position. And to the right of the screen on the bottom from the wide angle is our side judge and headline judge. This is a great place for the headline judge to have his eyes as this play develops, right? So now we have a return, those initial blocks, and now we see this setting up. And again, we want to identify him as a threat before he makes that contact. But that's a great place for the headline judge to have his eyes right now. And we'll get another look at it right here as we're scanning in front of the runner, looking for a threat. That's really where we want him to be looking. Anybody else that can help us out from a crew perspective here, Tuta?
Yeah, and these plays are really difficult. So we're not attempting to pick on anyone. These plays are really difficult.
Oh goodness, not at all.
Just from a small mechanical standpoint, I think the umpire would be able to help us if he got his eyes around a little bit quicker. If we look at the end zone, and this is a tiny thing, and this may not even be something that people think about. Watch the umpire. You can see from the reverse end zone angle. How do you decide which way to turn as an umpire? And how quickly are you going to turn? Those are things you really need to think about. If we watch this play, there are kicking team players that go to the right side of the umpire, only kicking team players. On the left side, there's kicking team and receiving team players. So which side would the bigger threat come from? That's what you need to determine as you're out there on the field, and turn in that direction instead of turning in the direction where there's less chance for a threat. And you can see it on this reverse end zone angle behind the receiving team as well. That's just something for the umpires to think about. Which way am I going to turn? And I know maybe we've never talked about that. We say, okay, umpire, turn when the players go by. Well, what does that mean? Well, figure out which way is the best way to turn in terms of getting your eyes into an area where you're going to be able to best help them.
That's awesome. Great stuff. I don't want to get crazy here, so reel me in if we need to. But Brandon, what about the referee? What's he's looking at as this return sets up?
Yeah. So the referee, as we look at this play from the end zone shot behind the kicker, it's kind of a unique punt formation relative to the college game. But we're okay. There's really no threat. So once the kick's gone, we basically just start looking for blocks, and we're really thinking blindside blocks. And if you're looking through, when the kick is to your right as a referee, compress your field of vision, your cone of vision, as we talk about, and really that cone of vision right between the hash and the numbers. I think we have a really good chance the referee to see some of this blindside block. I think primary, talk about the line of scrimmage guy and the umpire, if we can mechanically turn and get in the right position with our vision. But referees, don't just bail out. Don't quit just because we don't have any threat to the kicker. We can officiate blocks all the way down our side of the field, especially when the ball's kicked to the right side.
All right. So, and it's funny. It's funny. I'm gonna stop. We need to move on to another play. But Daniel and I, we watched as we were setting up to put this presentation together. We watched these plays, and we'll spend an hour on one play because there's just so many fascinating things that happen on a play, and it's like, dang. All right, let's ready to go to the next one. Oh, Brandon, any questions that we need to address here on this before we move on?
No, I think.
We're addressing the questions as we go. You guys are just knocking it out of the park, man. Keep it up.
All right.
I'm going to get the poll rolling.
All right. Now I'll get the play up.
All right. Which that point about, we could spend an hour on these plays really speaks to why they're so challenging from a crew perspective. So, let's look at video 3. Down here at the bottom.
Oh, shoot. My fault.
No, it's all right.
In America, normally we go in numerical order, and we put 3 after
right.
2. So I got confused. I'm sorry.
3 comes after 2. Even in a pandemic, 3 comes after 2. That's right.
I don't know about America, but that's how we do it in Texas. All right, so here's what we're asking. You just saw it right there. It's about the 23-yard line. That first block after the returner catches the punt and turns into a runner. Who's looking at this block? Who's going to have primary eyes there? And we'll let the play run a few more times so the poll can get some traction, and then we'll start breaking this one down also.
Man, speaking of plays that we broke down for an hour, huh, Daniel?
Holy good cow, man. And still probably left some things out there.
Oh, we absolutely did. That's correct.
All right, so we got our S on the bottom of the screen, field judge at the top. Tuta, talk to us a little bit about coverage on this initial block as the poll continues to roll.
Yes. So if we watch the field judge, this player that delivers the block and the person that got blocked was actually the field judge's initial key. And it's weird to think that the field judge would still be looking all the way across the field. What is the field, 53 1/3? And I don't know how long that would be, about 30-something, 35 yards across the field. But that's an area where the field judge, there's nothing else for the field judge to officiate. If you look at how the play develops, there's literally nothing else for him to officiate. So the field judge will absolutely have a piece of that block, and really, I would think would be primary on that block. If you look at the bottom, the side judge has some action going on up the numbers, and the action kind of finishes right before that block occurs. So the side judge may get to the block, but he probably will get there as the block is occurring and wouldn't be able to say with any certainty if it was an illegal block in the back or an illegal blindside block. But we would expect the side judge, if he has quick enough visual mechanics, which I don't know about that side judge, maybe to be able to work that block as well. But it's a really difficult one. And let me not talk from the back judge's perspective, because we have a back judge extraordinaire in the session. I'll let him go ahead and talk about from the back judge perspective.
Yeah, I don't know about that last part, but
I don't either. I was trying to make you feel good, man.
I know you were. I know you were. And I appreciate that. So I talked on that first play about that initial setup, right? And being 2 yards outside the shoulder of the returner on the wide side of the field, 7 yards deep, and trying to maintain that angle. And that 2 yards outside of the returner is a steep angle. And this is something that for me, I've been working through the last couple of years as an adjustment, because it previously was working wider because it gave us a better angle of the returner completing the process of catching the punt. But what we found is that if we maintain that steeper angle, right? And by steep, I just mean tighter to the returner. So not so far out wide and shallow, but a little bit deeper and tighter to him. What that allows us to do visually is transition to, okay, the catch is now completed. Let me go find a block. And so it's very minute, but in a game like this, where everything is happening so fast, that little bit of difference can be a really, really big deal. So again, by having that tighter angle, I'm able to get from the returner to threat quicker. And even to the point where I can officiate through the returner, especially in a situation like this, where he's not threatened as he catches the ball, to find that block. And to be honest with you, I really think I'd have a really good opportunity to officiate that block as well, just because we don't have an immediate threat on the returner. And I've got a little bit of space from the time the catch is completed to the time that that block occurs, where I think that would be able to get my eyes there too. So, you know, thinking about what Tuta said, what I just said, it's very, very possible that we could end up with 3 sets of eyes on this block. And I think that that would be appropriate if we ended up in that scenario.
So oftentimes there's a lot of different action for us to choose between to work. If we take a look, when we're in the end zone angle, you can see us on the left side of the screen. When we're on the sideline angle, it's at the bottom of the screen. There's a potential illegal blindside block at about the 50-yard line that occurs. So Daniel, talk about who would be able to see that action. Would the side judge need to be looking up the field and seeing that action? Because there's also a potential holding that's going on at the 35-yard line, the 35-yard line as well at the same time. There's 3 different pieces of action. How do we choose what we're going to work?
Yeah, that's really tough. So let's just talk first about the potential hold you mentioned down here at the bottom of the screen. I think it's so unique because we have in a play like this 8 officials out here officiating this play, and we're still in this situation where, like, holy cow, who's going to see that? I think that initial potential blindside block, boom, right there, I think that's probably a good place for the side judge to be. And correct me if you disagree, Tuta. But after that block occurs, now the ball's being caught, and we have immediate threats around the returner. So part of this process of choosing what you're going to officiate is a function of understanding what your crewmates are also going to officiate.
Right.
So
and also
I think
figuring out what to do next after you officiate that, depending on how the play sets up too.
Yeah, exactly right. And how you transition. So we think about, let's just talk a little bit in broad terms very quickly about how we're going to just kind of assign blocks from a crew perspective on this, right? We've got the back judge with a returner. We've got our deep wings, and they're going to have those first set of guys that are down there threatening the returner. And listen, those aren't necessarily always the gunners, right? We're going to see a play later where I think we have the center is the first guy down. So we got to get away from that mentality. It's really those first guys down there. And then we're going to get a whole bunch of other guys coming down. But they're also going to be really, really tight. And the message we want to make sure is very clear tonight for our short wings and our umpires is that we need help downfield. So the challenge with this potential blindside that I think we could talk about if we want isn't, but potential blindside that turns into a potential hold is if the headline judge stays with this too long, we're going to end up with a hole in coverage further downfield, because you think about the 40-yard line and we're getting tackled down here by the 25. That's a lot of space. So I don't know if that's kind of what your thinking was, but for me, that's one of those blocks that's in a really challenging area to officiate, even though it's in the middle of the field and there's not a lot of going on around it. When you think about the headline judge's visual progression, I don't know if he's going to get to that block or not.
Right. You meaning the potential blindside block at the 50?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that's the one he needs to be on personally, because, and let me try to go to the slides, because we took some still shots on the slides. We don't care about that. We don't care about that. Okay, so this slide kind of shows where the potential illegal blindside block is starting to set up. And why did my color go away? So the headline judge, who's right here at the bottom of the screen, he can choose between working this potential holding or working this area, which is where the potential illegal blindside block is occurring. I would think, based on what we looked at on the first play, that we don't want the headline judge to work this block. We want the headline judge to work this block. And that's not the best circle in the world. Let's go to the end zone angle. Clear. And what we will see is this block starting to, is just setting up. As a side judge, I'm still going to be looking at this block, because there's a potential that the West Virginia player could yank the Texas player. He could do something to him. So I'm going to be, as a side judge, still going to be working this block. And I would have a sense of what's going on with the potential illegal blindside block, but I really would not have a full understanding of what happened with that block. So I would expect that the headline judge would work that area. Now, can the referee be able to help on this? I don't know. That might be asking a lot. But this, if we go back to the video, and I'll go back to the video now, what we saw is this was a rugby-style kicker. So we don't have to necessarily stay watching the kicker long. If we can clear the threat on the kicker and then get upfield as a referee, and Brandon kind of talked about that on play 2 with the potential, not the potential, but the illegal blindside block downfield. If we can clear that action near the kicker and get our eyes upfield really quickly, and that's the I hope people realize that's the key point we're making here. We got to make really quick decisions and move our eyes really quickly on punt plays. So if the referee can do that, then we can have a little bit better coverage on this play. And I'm starting to filibuster a little bit. Let me shut up and go, Daniel.
Yeah, no, the last thing I want to mention is, and just to drive this point home about how we need help from the line of scrimmage and umpires turning and getting downfield with us deep guys, is we're going to see right around here, around this Big 12 logo, about the 25-yard line, not this one, but the other one down here is a potential blindside block. And the umpire's got a lot of stuff to look through here, but this is a block that we're going to need help on. There's a lot of stuff in front of the back judge and down here on the side judge. So this is an area where we think probably the umpire is going to have the best look at it. We talked about the headline judge visual progression, but just another example of another threat or potential foul that we need help on. So you'll see it right here around the 25, 30-yard line. And just kind of highlighting the idea that we need some help there.
Right.
All right. Anything else? Go ahead. Yep.
No, I was just saying you can see it perfectly on the end zone view. It shows it well. But yeah, these plays are extremely difficult, just in case we can't tell already from what we've already talked about.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit and let's just talk a little bit about KCI. I don't think these plays will take quite that long, but a couple of KCI plays, and again, had some comments about that. So what we're going to see here is a returner trying to catch the pump. He's going to get bumped by another guy. We've got a back judge with a first touching signal, and ultimately we're going to give the ball to team A. So remember with KCI, very simply, the rule is that the receiver of the kick has an unimpeded opportunity, to catch the kick. So anything that team A does or the kicking team does to interfere with that opportunity or make it impeded results in a foul. Real quick, if you saw from the end zone view, we're working with two punters here. So what we want to do is split the difference between those guys, and we want to get a great feel for the ball off the foot of the punter so we can start to identify who our receiver is going to be as a back judge and adjust our attention to them. Anytime our returners start on the 10-yard line, we're going to be on the end zone. So what we're going to see here is the Team B player, I think it's number 48, is really going to grab this Team A player, the kicking team player, and he's going to pull him into the returner. So because he's being blocked effectively into the returner, there's no foul for KCI. I want to talk about a couple of things mechanically as the play comes back up. Again, we see the split difference between the returners. Back judges, let's be very comfortable when the ball's starting to threaten the 20-yard line coming off of the goal line, right? And the reason we can do that, we'll see here in a few seconds as the end zone view shows up, is that we've got help there. So Tuta, talk to us about, as a deep wing, what you're thinking about standing on that pylon. As a back judge, we're a little bit hesitant to come off. There's a great view right there because we know we have responsibility for that goal line. Talk to us about your mechanics and how we're going to help.
Yeah, so as a deep wing, we're going to stay on that goal line until the goal line is obviously no longer threatened. Especially when the ball comes to our side of the field. If we're the opposite side official, then we need to come off the goal line a little bit, and we need to be paying attention to the returners and seeing if any of them block. And we kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago. If any of these returners block, the offside deep wing official really needs to know that and really needs to come have a conversation with the back judge about a blocking situation. But if we start on the goal line as a deep wing official, we stay on the goal line until it is evident that the goal line is no longer threatened. And in this play, we can see stay there, stay there, stay there. And then as soon as the kid muffs the ball, well, obviously the ball is not coming 20 yards back that way. And if we should be able to see it if it does. So now we can come off the goal line and then officiate the remaining action.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And to be honest with you, even feel a little more comfortable with the back judge getting off this goal line a touch earlier. Remember, what we're trying to do is officiate in such a way that when that critical moment happens, and in this case, that critical moment is really the catch, that we can be stationary and just stop and watch. It just so happens that this contact occurs prior to the ball coming. So I think the back judge is still working to get in that stationary position. But going back to that positioning perspective, we want to try to keep that tight angle so we can adjust to our blocking in front of the returner. So very comfortable with the back judge's angle of attack towards this returner. And let me also just speak to this first touching signal because he looks a little bit aggressive doing that. But that's a really critical thing. I always feel so silly when I see myself on film doing it. But here's what I'm doing when we do that. And the same thing for an illegal touch beanbag is we're creating a kind of muscle memory breadcrumbs for our brain because all of this other stuff is getting ready to happen very fast. And we're going to have to make a decision. By doing this signal over and over, I've told myself that Team B has touched the ball. So I now have a live ball and anybody can recover. If A recovers it, then I know it's going to be their ball first down that way. So really, really important. Certainly not one of those things we would call an empty mechanic, but something I would encourage you to get used to doing, making that ruling, whether it's the first touching or the illegal touching, which of course is the beanbag. So I don't know if there's anything else we need to hit on this, but good play. A good example of a kicking team member being not even just blocked into the returner, but literally pulled into the returner. So no foul for KCI.
All right. Hey, Daniel, let's talk
Yes,
about real quick the kicking team player. Let's say he's really not in this play, but let's say he's driving the blocker, the receiving team player, into his teammate who's the punt returner. Okay, so let me say that again. Kicking team player driving a blocker into his teammate who is the punt returner. Why wouldn't that be KCI? Just explain that concept.
Did you say driving his teammate into the punt returner? Or
sorry, the kicking team player is driving a blocker who is the teammate of the punt returner.
Oh, okay, got it. And so then the teammate of the punt returner makes contact. Yeah, we've got a great play example of that that really helps us illustrate that idea later, I think. But if I'm a kicking team player and I can shove you into your teammate, I haven't really impeded your opportunity. I just bullied your teammate into getting into your way. So same situation where we wouldn't have a foul for KCI.
Perfect. Thank you.
And to add to that, if the receiving team player doesn't want KCI, then he's just get away from the returner.
Yeah, great point. All right, let's move on to our next play here.
Oh boy,
another KCI play, but some different considerations. Let's just talk about the KCI part real quick, and then we've got a poll question that we can attach to it. But what we're going to see again is, let's wait for our end zone view. We're going to see again a punt returner in great position, set up to catch the pass, and then a guy shove a team A player into the returner where he doesn't have control over his body. He's not responsible for that contact, the returner. So again, because we're going to use that language of blocked into the returner, we're going to take him off of the KCI. We'll see it right there where number 9 really shoves A6 into the returner and takes him off of the KCI. But then we got a lot of other stuff happening, right? We've got a ball careening off somebody, and then we've got a recovery, and we have to come to a decision and figure out what we're going to do. Let's put the poll up, and as I find it, Tuta, talk to him a little bit about what we're asking in the poll here.
Yeah, so what we're asking in the poll is on the field, the ruling on the field was the receiving team, the ball hit the receiving team player. So we did not have illegal touching of a kick by the kicking team player. So what we're asking is assume there's indisputable visual evidence that the ball actually hit the kicking team player. And what does that change with the results of this play? So Daniel, why don't you talk about while people are voting, why don't you talk about your process on this play, and we'll just be full disclosure. This was Daniel Young working this play, and this was one of the greatest plays I've ever seen officiated. I'm not just blowing smoke up this dude's butt. When we went in there and had a conversation about it, he literally had every single element of this play nailed down, and I didn't have to say anything. I was just standing there listening. So why don't you talk about what was your ruling on this play, and how did you process everything that happened?
Yeah, sure. You're too kind, but sometimes anybody can get lucky once in a while. So this is one of those similar action that we talked about on play 3, where it just so happens that I'm in a position, although watching it, I'd really like to be a little bit tighter to that punt returner as all of this is going down. But it just so happens that based upon my angle, I was able to see all of this happen holistically, where a lot of times, Tuta, if it's a back judge, I call KCI, I may not have any conception of this other part, right, of him being blocked into it. And so we're going to need some help from the deep wings. It just so happens that throughout this play, I was able to stay really stationary. And in my field of vision, I saw very clearly that 9 blocked 6 into the punt returner. And you can see it right here. It's just all pretty compressed. So I never had any question about that part. And also had very, very comfortable feeling that the ball hit off of number 9's arm. So I didn't have any question about first touching either. Although when you watch it on replay, it's really, really close. I don't know why. I was very confident that it hit 9 first. But again, it was just one of those plays where you can see I'm just in a position to process the block and then the touching, and we were able to move forward from there. Right. So
the ruling on the field was no kick catch interference because it was no foul for kick catch interference because the defender was blocked, or not the defender, the kicking team player was blocked into the receiver. Also, the ruling on the field was that the ball touched the receiving team, and it was a recovery by the kicking team. So we awarded the ball to the kicking team. That was the ruling on the field. So then the question we're asking is, this obviously went to instant replay because this is so tight. Assume that the ball actually hit off the kicking team player number 6. And what are we going to do at that point in time? So I think the votes have pretty much come in, and we have 74% of people saying it's going to be an illegal touching. Here's the problem with calling that an illegal touching. Number 6 was in no control of his body. He's basically getting blocked into the ball. He got blocked into the player, and had the ball hit him, we would judge, at least I would judge, that he got blocked into the ball as well. He is not a person who is actively blocking or actively participating. As a matter of fact, he's pretty much receiving an illegal blindside block, although this was prior to the illegal blindside block rule. But he is not in control of his body at that point in time when he's flying through the air about to contact the returner. So if a player is blocked into the ball, we ignore the touching. And I think that's what we would have in a situation like this. However, there's a lot more we have to talk about, because if this play goes, if you're working a game with instant replay and this play goes to instant replay the replay official can only determine if the ball touched, who the ball touched first. They cannot determine if a player was blocked into the ball or not. So we have to have a very strong ruling on the field before we get to the point where we get to the instant replay process. And I know Brandon is itching to say something. Brandon, go.
Yeah. So think about how important communication is, and we're gonna stand up here and talk about replay ramifications, but just go with us. I mean, what we're really talking about is communication. And so are we communicating with officials on the crew? Are we communicating with coaches, players, the audience in the stadium, the audience if the game's on TV? Okay, whatever. It's really just about communication. So, Daniel, talk me through one more time how you reported this situation, and then we'll go through the announcement process, and then we'll go through the process of eventually getting paged by replay. So how did you report this?
Thing I led with was there's no KCI on the play. The kicking team member was blocked into the returner. I've got first touching by team B, then a subsequent recovery by team A. So we've got, probably didn't say team A and B, but TCU football going this way with a legal recovery. Yeah. So then, as all good referees do who are basically parrots, what we're going to announce is there was no foul on the play for kick catch interference. The kicking team player was blocked into the punt returner. The ruling on the field is the ball was first touched by the receiving team, recovered by the kicking team. It's first down TCU. Okay, great. However, that announcement puts us at risk. And Tutai, you were going to get into why. So let's talk through that, and then I'll talk about getting paged, by instant replay and how we're going to handle that. So why are we at risk with that announcement?
We're at risk with that announcement because we haven't given enough information that from a rules perspective, we haven't given enough information to the replay official. If we determine that the kicking team player was blocked into the ball, well, see, we announced. So the problem is our ruling is that the receiving team touched it. We also ruled that the kicking team player was blocked into the action.
Right.
If we don't tell the replay official and the world that the kicking team player was blocked into the action, then what the replay official has to do by rule is determine who touched the ball. And if number 6 touched the ball and we did not tell him, him being the replay official, that he was blocked into the ball, then a replay official has no choice but to say number 6 touched the ball. That's illegal touching, and that'll be West Virginia's ball at that spot. So we have to figure out some kind of way, and I don't know how we do that.
Yep.
To communicate. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You've pointed out the risk. So we think we're doing a great job just reporting the ruling on the field. All right. Now, we get paged by replay. There needs to be some kind of thought triggered in everybody's head. I mean, the referee needs to be good enough to think about this on his own, but it would be really great if there was, more than just one person thinking about this on their own. What is the thought that we need to trigger into our head? Because what's reviewable here, Daniel? Whoever. What's reviewable here? Right, touching. Who first touched the kick? Because that's, talk about significant direct competitive effect in instant replay. Yeah, this is a significant direct competitive effect. Who's going to end up with the ball after this play? I mean, it's huge, regardless of time, score, all that stuff. So touching is reviewable. So if we get paged to go to instant replay here, we've got to think about communicating more, right? And so if we think, we just talked about the fact that the kicking team player was blocked into the returner, and that's why we're not ruling KCI. I think it's on us to maybe make a secondary announcement. So what kind of a communication do we need now?
Well, we need the side judge, or in this case, the back judge who had clear vision to tell the referee, well, this player was, as soon as he feels that page, he needs to say, well, if we're going to review illegal touching, we need to make an announcement that this player, the kicking team player, was blocked into the ball.
Right. Okay. So now let's go back almost to the poll question scenario and say, look, instant replay has indisputable video evidence that the player in the black jersey, number 6 in this case, in the black jersey, touched the ball first. Okay. So instant replay is thinking, I've got to act on this. I see touching by number 6. We need to put information out there and communicate to our 9th and 10th crew members up in the replay booth. And again, I'm not saying that in order of importance, replay officials. It's just kind of how things have evolved. So go with me. We need to communicate that we are ruling number 6 was blocked into the football. And therefore, we are not attributing on the field with our judgment any type of touching to him. We're attributing it to him being forced into the football. We're disregarding him touching the ball. And, if we get all the way under the headset, which we probably still would, quite frankly, because this is kind of a rare, on video, it's a little bit simple when we slow it down and look at it 25 times. In the moment, not so much. If we get under replay and they say, look, the replay official, I got number 6 touching the ball. Okay, thank you, Mr. Replay Official. We get that. We already announced and communicated that number 6 was blocked into the football. Oh, great. So I'm out of this. It's not reviewable about blocked into. I can't judge any of, the severity of the contact. I can't judge any of that from a replay standpoint by rule. So we're going to let the play stand. Oh, okay. So now we're going to let the play stand. If we just come out and say, the ruling on the field stands, that the receiving team touched the ball and it was recovered by the kicking team, guess what? Now we're going to look even almost worse than we already did with all this other stuff going on. So we've got to be almost even more clear on our out of replay announcement saying, after reviewing the play, the ball was first touched by number 6 of the kicking team. However, since the ruling on the field was that the receiving team player blocked him into the football. By rule, that touching is disregarded. The ruling on the field that the ball was touched by the receiving team first and recovered by the kicking team stands as called. It's first down TCU. So a lot of things to think about, a lot of we cannot get this right without communication, guys. And I mean, I think your point to start the whole session out with pump plays was not only do we have to be great mechanically with our vision, our movement, when things happen like this, we've got to be elite communicators, right? And how do we just got to prepare by going through exercises like this. Do you agree?
Yeah, and the one thing you left out too, Brandon, we have to be elite from a mental perspective. We have to understand the rules and the ramifications behind our communications or our lack thereof. We have to understand that.
Yeah, just a tremendous play to kind of bank and for future reference, a really, really, really good play to learn from. So, all right, we ready to go to the next one?
Yeah, we let Brandon take like 30 minutes of our session here. So, yeah, let's go.
It's kind of what referee.
Oh, another one. Do we have a poll with this one, Daniel? I can't remember. I don't think we do. Huh? We do. Okay.
Yeah, we do. It's on the way right now. And
okay.
So what we're asking is we're going to see a potential hold around the 48-yard line. He's going to take him to the ground. That's the B48. And just again, going through that process of who's got the best opportunity to officiate this action.
Yeah, and kind of to set up this play, this kind of, I mean, I know we're beating a dead horse here, but we pulled this play because we were looking for KCI plays. So this was in our set of plays for KCI. And then we got all off into all kind of other stuff that we saw during the play that had nothing to do with KCI. And we kind of almost forgot about the KCI action. And that's what I want to stress to everyone when we pull plays and when we review film. Don't only look at what you're supposed to be looking at, quote unquote, from the original reason why you turned the film on. Look at everything else and try to figure everything else out.
Oh, this is interesting. All right, it looks like most of the votes are in. So we're looking at this action that ends up being a takedown block again around the B48-yard line. And we're just wondering who can see it. And I think what we're going to notice first, and referees, got two of them on here. I keep forgetting that. Jump in here, but we're not going to see a lot of threatening action to the shield, right? So we're not going to see any threatening action to our punter. So it feels like maybe this is an opportunity for a referee to move his eyes downfield and start to help us with, we've got those initial set of guys that are deep wings or officiating. Then we've got this second set of guys kind of that are umpire and line of scrimmage guys that are officiating. What about the referee helping on this block? What do we think? Is this a block that we can expect our referee to help us with here? Because it feels like.
So when I watched this play, that was the first thing that jumped out at me as a person who's about to be a referee. I'm looking and I'm like, okay, I know the center judge and referee, we have action on the shield. Center judge is primary. We got action on the kicker. But there's really nothing going on at the shield area except this one dude who's kind of lollygagging towards the shield. He's not coming out like a bat out of hell. He's just kind of slow rolling it to the shield. So if I'm a referee and I'm looking at that shield, and I know the center judge is also looking at that shield, I don't know if that's the best use of our talents here. And I think maybe I can look up and find something else to work. That's what my thought process was. And maybe I'm making it a little too simplistic, but I feel like we can maybe look up and find something else to work because there's really nothing to work in the backfield at that time. So that's the way I was looking at it. And if we look at it from the umpire perspective, the end zone view shows it perfectly. the umpire has two sets of players that are running directly at him about to split him, and he's worried about getting killed. And he probably would be the one that we would expect to see this under normal circumstances, but he was about to get killed, and he's probably just clutching himself and just praying to God that he doesn't get run over.
He's in survival mode.
Hey guys, I think you're right. I think, look, we've got some really smart umpires. At least they're pretending to be smart umpires in the chat. And I think, they're used to this. They're used to this traffic. And look, it's hard. We understand that. I think if we can get our umpires and all of us really to recognize the detail of actions of players, this takedown sets up early.
Yes,
the umpire could have perhaps seen maybe a little bit better on this play. So just stay with us on that. Use your peripheral vision. I know it's easier said than done, and I don't even pretend to know what that's like. But it goes to the point of watch video, notice actions of players, and there's little tells that take place that we can use to help us get plays right.
Are you saying that bear hug is a tell?
Well, I mean, maybe.
All right, good play. Anything else before we move on?
Yeah, you want to touch on the KCI aspect, Daniel, or you just want to roll through it because we have enough KCI plays later.
Yeah, we got a couple more KCI plays coming up that are going to really kind of touch on the same principle, but the short version is that this receiver is impeded with, so this will be a foul for KCI. All right, let's move on to the next one. And this is, in fact, a KCI specific play. And I believe we have a poll for this one. Yeah. All right, so just started the poll. We'll let this play a couple of times, and don't worry. I know we're going a little bit longer than normal. You guys are doing a great job hanging with us, but these last few plays won't take too much longer. So we're starting to wind down. Again, appreciate you hanging with us. But here's what we're asking. Just is this KCI or not? Our options are, yeah, it's KCI. He's within 1 yard of the buffer by rule. And the second choice is it's not KCI by rule because he's got an unimpeded opportunity to make the catch. And then lastly, it's not a foul for KCI because 25 fields the punt cleanly. Let it play a couple of more times. I'll start working through it real briefly as the votes continue to roll in. And again, I'll just tell you very directly that we have a philosophy that combines with our KCI rules. So remember, by rule for KCI, the returner has the right to a 1 yard buffer shoulder to shoulder in front of him to complete that catch. Now, before we get into the philosophy, let's just discuss very quickly why that rule exists. And I'll tell you that rule exists to avoid the prospect of a returner getting annihilated as soon as he catches the ball. Although he's able to complete the catch, right? That process is over, but he gets annihilated immediately as that happens. There's really no harm, no foul because he's completed the catch, so he wasn't impeded with. And so that 1 yard buffer rule was really designed as a safety mechanism to protect from that happening, so that when we have a receiver catch the punt and he's immediately blown up, we have the freedom to call that KCI, and we're trying to keep that from happening, and that's that 1 yard buffer rule. So what derived from that was this kind of a play where that's not what's happening at all, but rather a guy's made a fair catch signal, the kicking team is letting up, and there's no safety threat here. So we created a philosophy. And real simple, the philosophy is, we'll watch this one more time real quick from the line feed, and then we're going to move quickly to the next video. The philosophy is, if he's made a fair catch signal, even though the kicking team is within that 1 yard buffer, if he's able to field that catch cleanly, then we don't have a foul for KCI. Now we have a little bit of a caveat to this, and this is what video is going to show us. So we've got a signal for KCI. We've got a kicking team player within that 1 yard buffer. Remember, if he fields it cleanly, there's no foul for KCI. Think about the no harm, no foul language. However, if he gets so close that he contacts the returner, then we will have a foul for KCI. So again, let's just go through the philosophy real quick. We've got a fair catch signal. We've got a kicking team member within that 1 yard buffer. If there is no contact and a cleanly fielded punt, there is no foul. If there is contact or if there is a muffed punt, there is a foul, right? So that's the philosophy application of the rule, okay? So before we move on to our next play, is there anything we need to address with that? Everybody comfortable with this idea of where the philosophy meets the rule and how we want to work this so that we're officiating these plays consistently across leagues?
Daniel, you covered the philosophy great. There were a few questions, and you actually answered them without knowing that they were asked. So excellent job.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. Just a couple more plays, and we'll wrap this up. Again, just want to look at punt mechanics, and specifically we're looking at the bottom of the screen here on this sideline view. And we're looking at the side judge. Got a poll coming here for you. So we got a lot of options on the choices, and basically we're just asking which one do you think is most correct. So let me just tell you right there around on the right side of the screen from the end zone view around the 45-yard line, I believe, we're going to have a potential offensive holding action. We've got a flag down on the play. The side judge threw this flag, and so the question is this an appropriate place for the side judge to be looking? And your options are, no, we don't ever want him looking that far at this point in the punt, or yeah, it's okay, but we need him to get to the returner before the ball's caught, or ultimately, is he just officiating a threat that he sees, and he's aware enough to see we have a returner who's not threatened. We don't have any of those initial attackers downfield from Team A who are being threatened, so we're okay with him picking up this block.
Hey, Daniel.
Yes, sir.
I got a question for you while we let these poll results come in. You're saying
Sure.
This is offensive holding. Explain why you're referring to this action as offensive holding.
That's a great question. I think I've had this conversation on the field before, to be honest with you. And it's not a good conversation, a little bit frustrating. All right, so as soon as the ball's kicked, we're going to transition now in terms of holding, right? Where the receiving team, what we're calling, when we go through test questions, we're calling the receiving team Team B, right? Because we want to be consistent throughout the whole thing so nobody goes crazy. However, as soon as the ball's kicked, all of that changes, where now Team B is really the team who's going to be in possession of the ball. So their fouls, really applying to holding, are going to be offensive holding fouls. I don't know if that covers all of the nuances of that, but that's the best way I can think of to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, in contrast to something like a pull and shoot at the line of scrimmage, right? With the purpose of that, or the goal of that action being to block the kick. This is really, we talk about actions that are designed to set up a return. Now we transition into more post-possession type of actions. So you explained it better than my follow-up there. Good job.
Yeah, no, post-possession I think is really key. This is an and what's very key, this is an offensive holding foul, not a defensive holding foul. Hey, the side judge who throws this flag happens to be joining us this evening. So I think, golly, as an audience, Virus-Free Virtual Clinic did a great job on this question. But here's my concern as a back judge, right? There's the possibility that my returner is going to get collisioned, and he's going to be blocked into. And if you're working all the way down here at the 45-yard line, are you going to be able to help me with that? So that's my question. Talk us through this visual mechanics real quick, Tuta.
Yeah. So it obviously it is dangerous for us to work that far downfield when there's other.
Wait a second. Is that your middle name?
Huh?
Danger?
Well, no, I'd let it rip sometime, but so if we take a look at this formation and we take a look at the way that the play plays out, the first person down is the snapper. He's running down the middle of the field all by himself. The next person down, I think it was the right guard. He was running down the field all by himself. The widest player that the side judge was initially keying on was getting grabbed at the line of scrimmage, and that immediately took the side judge's attention, and he stayed with that action because he realized there was nothing else to really work. And here's the key point. When you recognize the foul and throw your flag, you don't have to watch your flag go, because guess what? This is a PSK foul. Once the ball is kicked, we're going from the spot from the end of the kick for all these fouls anyway. So it doesn't matter where your flag goes, and you don't have to watch it. So just throw your flag and find the next action closest to the returner where you really need to work after you've already identified that action. So I think it is appropriate for the side judge to work that foul, but it is dangerous if the side judge is not disciplined enough to immediately get back to where the crew really needs the help and where the back judge needs the help, which is right in front of the returner.
Yeah, I agree. And would you agree, Tuta, that on a play like this where you have a sense of how all of these threats are developing relative to the returner and those first kind of threat guys, that gives you a little bit more freedom?
Absolutely. Yes. So yeah, like I was saying, the first people to come down were running all by themselves. So if I stand there and I watch the first person down like I'm prescribed to do, then I'm really not helping anybody. Like, look at the dude, he's running up the hash all by himself. There's nothing for him to do. So why would I sit there and watch him when there's a bigger threat? And that's kind of what we let off with. Find a way to help the crew.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
absolutely.
Guys, look, we have actually intentionally not talked a whole lot about offensive holding because we kind of all agree it's really not that compelling. I mean, holding is holding, and we're going to have 50% think it's not, 50% think it is. But on this play, what if we have a fair catch by the returner? Talk about philosophy. Talk about element of time and all these different things on what would go into making this a quality call or not.
Oh, geez. Well, this particular play, we got to look at the timing of the restriction, the timing of where the returner caught the ball, and the location or proximity. I'm gonna use Daniel's four-syllable word. The proximity of the restriction to the catch of the kick. In this situation, I would say that the hold happened so early that we would already have our flag out. We wouldn't have any idea that there would be a hold. Now, if the hold happened a lot later, and then we had an idea that the returner gave a fair catch signal, then I would say, yeah, we probably want to hold our flag. But in this situation, the hold developed early, so we really can't maybe decide, well, let me hold my flag to see if he's going to return it, if he's not going to return it. I think we need to we see the restriction, see the foul, throw the flag, and then work the play from there. But if the restriction occurred near when the time the returner gave a fair catch signal and completed the fair catch, I would say no, we would not want to throw a flag for holding.
But in this case, I mean, the element of time is there's such a delay.
Yes, it was way before the kick was caught. So yes, I would say that this would be a quality flag, providing that the restriction was actually there. Quality flag for holding from a timing perspective.
Yeah, and it gets to the point where we don't want to go too deep into this, but we can't us not calling these kinds of things and trying to justify no impact on the play, or we're trying to talk ourselves out of it, it almost is promoting illegal techniques by blockers. And
Right.
we need to be really careful about being too technical the other way of not calling these fouls, especially when there's such an element of time between the restriction and the catch.
That's correct.
So talk about one more time. There was a really, really good question about so you're the calling official. How important is it to get the yard line? Let's say this guy returns it for a touchdown. How important is the spot of this foul? We're looking at the play. There's no what ifs here. We're looking at this play exactly as it's presented to us. How important is the spot of the foul as the calling official?
It's totally unimportant. It is meaningless. Right. You can actually drop the flag on your foot if you want to, because this foul occurs during the kick. And as we know, that brings in PSK rules, post-scrimmage kick enforcement, and the basic spot for post-scrimmage kick enforcement is the end of the kick. So it is irrelevant where the hold occurred.
But extremely relevant as back judges that we get a great PSK spot. So let's not get in the habit as back judges of just winging our beanbag, thinking doesn't matter. They're never, how many times do they ever come back to my beanbag spot? Let's be very deliberate and consistent that we're working a great post-scrimmage kick spot. And that may mean sometimes jogging up there to it and dropping it, keeping a mental note of the yard line where it was caught, but need a really good spot in that regard.
Yeah. And one last point, we stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest with talking about offensive holding, defensive holding. We want to be very, very consistent and call this action offensive holding. If we're going to enforce it as a PSK foul, it is offensive holding. If we call it defensive holding, now we're going to confuse ourselves, because how can we have defensive holding and we're talking about PSK? That's what's confusing. So let's just, as a country, all of us around the world working NCAA rules, this is offensive holding, and we are very, very absolute on that.
Yeah, no gray area there. This is offensive holding without question. And again, let me just, not to beat it up, but close on this play. We have a philosophy that guidelines how we officiate blocks with a fair catch signal, right? If it's happening very close from a time element to the time the ball's caught, we're not going to call the foul. If there's a time element, a space between the block and the catch, it's a foul. And we don't have to overthink that, right? And that's what Brandon's point was. We don't have to get over technical. We have a philosophy to guide how we officiate in that situation. So let's just lean on the philosophy in those scenarios.
All right.
Daniel, point of clarification. You don't mean personal fouls, right? You're meaning restricted.
Oh, yeah. Fouls. Correct. Absolutely right. Yes. Thank you for that. Absolutely not.
Okay. And then let me just, as a referee, I want to just respond real quick. If we just report this as holding by the receiving team, that's an incomplete report to the referee as the calling official. You can't just say, I got holding by the receiving team and run away. You have to put it in, what do we call it? We don't call it hopper. We call it, what's the status of the ball, right? So if it's during the kick, it is holding by the receiving team, but really we're going to code that as offensive holding. So have we beat this up enough? Yes, but it is important. So let's move on.
Good stuff. All right, guys, last play. This will go super fast again. Looked at some awesome stuff tonight. Really good conversation. I just wanted to include this play, and I don't think it's going to be one like the last one where you have to go into a lot, but you never know. And we're going to get a foul here for KCI. Just looking at the line feed, and this is such a cool play. You don't see this very often, but I want to draw a distinction. We've looked at two plays tonight where a kicking team member was blocked into a returner. And we're going to kind of see a contrast of that in this play, where we're going to see contact by a return team player, but we're going to see a kicking team player who is very much in control of his body and collision the returner and impede in his opportunity to catch that. So I just wanted to include this one because It's really unique action. We don't see this very often. And two, we can't officiate this lazy. We can't just see, oh, wait, there's contact by the return team, so we have no KCI. That's not what the rule says. He's got to be blocked into. We need the return team to cause that contact, not what happens here. The kicking team member causes this contact. He just happens to also be in contact for a receiving team member. Another we mentioned this earlier, and I think our first blocked into play, but let's suppose that B16 is a really strong dude. He's got his position, and B9 collisions him and just blows him up and knocks him back into the returner. Well, that's a different scenario. We would not have a foul for KCI. But again, just a really unique play we don't see very often. So I wanted to include it tonight and give everybody the opportunity to just kind of see this action and then bank it for future reference. Anything you guys want to add to this play that maybe I didn't mention?
Nope. I think you did a good job on that.
So, Daniel, let's go back real quick. You may have something going on, but I'm just here to talk football. Isn't that why we created this? I think
Yes.
so.
That is right. Yeah.
Look, and what time is it? Okay. Oh, we're an hour and 25 in. I'm still here to talk football. Okay. How much freedom does the back judge have? You know, go back to that K-State Baylor play. We don't have to put it up or whatever, but how much freedom does the back judge have to move off the goal line? We talked about that a lot, and you covered that great, and the play shows it. But what about like outside the hash, all the way to the numbers? Talk about just, is the back judge restricted in his movement at all?
That's a great point. So glad you brought that up. I think there was a time where we were telling back judges, let's stay within the hashes in the middle of the field. We got deep wings over there. And really, that's just not how we officiate that at all. Guys, back judges, let me just tell you right now, very, very point blank, we're working sideline to sideline. So put yourself in a position to officiate the action. And when we think about this play, the Baylor play, and that other play, we've got all the freedom in the world to get outside of the hash and put yourself in a position or create an angle for yourself to see what you need to see. What we always want to do, whether we're officiating, a pass is coming down and we're working catch, no catch, or we're working potential DPI, we want to put ourselves in a position to see between players and between lines. So do what you need to do to do that. There's no force field right there at the hashes, and this play is a great example of that, of being able to create your angle and get in a position to officiate the action.
Yeah, great. Just a great answer. I mean, I appreciate you cherry picking all these plays that you look really good on, by the way. I thought you did a great job of that.
That is not what happened. Not what happened.
No, they are. Seriously. I mean, they are great plays, officiated well. Could we have done things differently, a little better? Maybe. There's always opportunity for improvement. To Ty, your point of, you guys picked these plays, and then you saw about 10 other aspects that caught your eye that were actually, almost even more important to talk about than the essence of the play itself. So I thought it was a great point you hammered home, and I mean, this was just a great session you guys put together. I appreciate it.
Well, before we go, I have a question for Daniel, because he kind of touched on it about beanbag mechanics. And not necessarily having a lazy beanbag mechanic. I was watching a game 2 days ago, and the kicking team, the receiver muffed the ball. The kicking team player caught the airborne muff and ran it into the end zone. And what ended up happening was the back judge, as soon as the receiving team player started to go into his catching motion, the back judge threw his beanbag from like 15 yards away to the spot. And what actually happened was the receiver never possessed the kick. So, Daniel, what I wanted to ask you, and you kind of touched on it a little while ago, what are some tips you give some back judges in terms of when and how you're going to drop your beanbag? You mentioned running up to the yard line. Do you pitch it? When do you decide to say, okay, now I need to throw my beanbag versus, well, let me hold off on throwing my beanbag? Talk about some of that.
Wow, that's a great question. So you're saying that the returner the ball bounced off him into the air and then was possessed by the kicking team?
That's correct. It was not a fair catch. So just to be clear on that, it was not a fair catch. So I know people are going to say, no, it was not a fair catch. He simply muffed the ball in his attempt to catch the kick. And the ball went airborne. The kicking team player was in good position. He just ended up running and grabbing the ball right out of midair. And the ruling on the field was a touchdown because the back judge had a beanbag down.
Wow. That's a great point. Wow, that's such a great point for what I tried to say earlier. That doing those things, whether it's a first touch signal or a beanbag, you're creating for yourself mental breadcrumbs for the play. So if I'm a back judge and I've got that beanbag down, even though it was clearly a muff and it should be dead upon possessing the ball, I've got a beanbag down. So I've communicated to myself that the punt returner possessed the ball and there was a fumble. So yeah, I'm ruling touchdown because we can advance that.
Right.
So the tip is, and I can give this tip because if you notice, we watched the play earlier, the TCU West Virginia, where we went back and forth about the touching, right? And the replay, remember that poll question?
Yep.
If you notice on the play, the back judge dropped the beanbag incorrectly because the whole time the back judge was working that the team B touched the ball first, but it was such an explosion of all these things that the reason he dropped the beanbag was just to give himself time to think. So he just did something which is not good advice. That's just what happened that play. So my point is that I'm kind of giving advice here, but understanding that these are really hard. What you want to do is attach your mechanics to something tangible. And so when I've got a beanbag in my hand and I know the punt's coming, I'm telling myself he's got to catch the ball. He's got to complete the catch. We did catch, no catch a few weeks ago or last week. He's got to complete the catch. That's when I'm going to drop my beanbag when it's over. And how you get there, how you get there doesn't really, if you got to walk it up there, if you got to toss it, either way, it's okay. What's really important, if you're really far away, what I would encourage you to do is create a marker in your brain, and that could be a big line, that could be a logo, so that you can identify where the yard, and you're not like chucking your beanbag, right? So I can jog up to it or walk up to it. If you're right there next to it, it's fine to toss it. Another good point, and we talked about this with flag placement a couple of weeks ago or last week, I can't remember. It's all running together during the quarantine. But you don't have to put it at the spot of the catch. You got to put it on the yard line of the catch so you can be away from the returner and still get it on that same yard line. Also, we talked about this, about understanding who the return team is and who the kicking team is. And whatever your kind of trick for doing that is, I use colors. And so when this color touches the ball on the Baylor play, when it was white touches the ball, I'm going to give the tip signal. And I'm creating for myself that muscle memory where now I know we got a live ball, but it wasn't possessed. I've got a muffed punt. And so if team A gets the ball, I'm going to kill this play immediately. And of course, if team B gets it, then it is what it is. But I don't know if that answers your question or helps anybody, but that's kind of the things that I think about getting ready for these plays.
Yep.
Hey,
Perfect.
Hey, Daniel, though, I mean, look, it's great that you can just sit there and talk about this and how you did it, but it just didn't happen. Okay. This did not, you weren't able to do that. It just doesn't happen. It's not a spontaneous event. It takes practice. It takes repetition. But you've talked about earlier where in practices and spring games and fall scrimmages, you don't really see punts. So how do you load yourself? How do you prepare yourself to actually execute when everything matters?
So the first tip I tell everyone is there's no substitute for live action. So even when I'm on a spring scrimmage or a fall scrimmage, I'm an idiot out there with a punt returner when nobody is coming towards him and they're just doing reps, even in practice before it starts, and I'm dropping my beanbag, I'm coming up to it. If he muffs it, I'm giving the tip signal. Same thing in pregame, like look like a total moron out there. But I know, like we talked about at when we first started this session, that these plays represent far less. I don't have the data, but far less than 10% of all the plays we're going to officiate. So I've got to leverage every opportunity to do this live that I can. And then if you can't get live reps, the next best thing is watching a lot of film, right? And going through not just these like blow up plays that get all this attention, but very routine plays where I can get mental reps, where I can watch a returner catch a punt and even say out loud. And my wife is like, what are you talking about? Beanbag. The catch is over, beanbag. Or, oh, that's a muff signal, right? So it's really just about being cognizant that this is a unique situation relative to all of the other plays that we're going to officiate, and leveraging every opportunity first in those practice situations, and then secondly on film.
So two times. I think Daniel has it easy though. He's only got the returner to watch, and he's got to go with the ball. You, as a side judge, you've got to think about transitioning to different blocks. How do you set that up mentally? We saw a lot of great examples of that, and actually, if we're honest, we saw some examples that we could have got better throughout the session. So, I mean, you've really got everything coming at you from a blocking perspective that's different from normal plays. So how do you set yourself up for that? Because you don't get reps either during the sprint.
Right. And to echo what Daniel was saying, first of all, we have to watch film. And we can't just watch like he said, the blow up plays. Think about the first play we watched tonight. There was literally nothing happened on that play. It was just a simple return that went out of bounds. And we spent 15 minutes talking about visual mechanics on who should see this block if the block occurred. And that's the type of stuff we have to do all the time. I guarantee everybody has a catalog of punt plays. Turn them on and just watch and see, where should I be looking? Where should I be looking? Did I see this? Should I have seen this? And then when we get out onto the field, the first thing is getting deep, as we mentioned on our pre-snap positioning. I get 15 yards behind the returner. And it may seem like I'm in a whole nother county, another area code, and I don't care. Because what that allows me to do is sit there in a calm, peaceful manner and be able to evaluate, okay, what block is the biggest threat? So as the play begins, first thing we need to notice is, what is the formation? How wide is the widest person on my side of the field? Is there a player lined up, heads up on him? Which way does he take his step? Does he take his step to the outside? Does he take his step to the inside? If he takes his step to the outside, he has a potential for getting pushed out of bounds. So then I can take a peep and see, okay, who's the next person next to my first person? Which step does he take off the line of scrimmage? Does he inside release? Does he outside release? Who else is coming down the field? And we're going to have to get really quick eyes. You're going to have to get really, really, really quick eyes and just boom, 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 quickly find areas and see, are they a threat or are they not a threat? If they're a threat, stay with it. If they're not a threat, move to something else that may be a threat, and continue to look for areas that are threats as the play develops. And then all of this happens, of course, in 6 seconds. People get knocked all over the place. The play ends, and then the crowd is booing, and you realize, dang, I just missed a horse collar tackle on my returner. And then, so it's really tough, but we just have to practice, and film work.
And don't you also have the spot? Like, don't you have the spot all of a sudden?
Absolutely.
That's
so
interesting.
yeah, and that's something to take note of as a side judge. How often are we trailing the runner getting a spot? Less than probably 5% of the time. I would say less. It might be less than 1% of the time. I mean, we just never do it. As a deep official, we never get spots. So we have to figure out, how do I get a spot in this situation? And we're so used to looking at blocks. How do I look at blocks and watch the runner? And it's just something that we just have to work on and just continue to hone our craft.
Yeah, and you guys will have fouls, and I just always love, you guys are so cute back there with your flag.
Hey,
and you get so excited about fouls. Referees, we just want to help our crewmates and just really because was it during the kick? Was it during the return? Sometimes we forget that simple little detail of reporting fouls because like the guys have talked about tonight, these plays are crazy. There's a lot going on. It stresses I think, Daniel, it stresses our mental capacity to process all this stuff, so sometimes it's just nice, I think, for the referees to have it in their framework. You talked about creating breadcrumbs. I hadn't heard of that before, but I kind of like that. I think I'm getting there. Just to say, look, this is our muscle memory for kick plays. Was it during the kick or was it during the return? And let's just help our guys report. You see what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely. You guys need all the help you can get for sure.
Yeah, we do.
Certainly don't want you getting involved in things like KCI and things of that nature.
Yeah, and we can see a lot from way back there, 70 yards back. I was challenged tonight, and it was a good question about that blindside block. I can't remember what play it was. You guys had like 20 plays.
Yeah,
it just seemed to go on, but yeah, I mean it was pretty good, but it was. And I just thought the referee could get involved in that. It was that play with 2 blindside blocks, and it's like, are you going to throw your flag 70 yards? And well, probably not. I mean, I wish I could throw my flag 70 yards, but I don't know if I have that physical capability, and I don't really need you guys to chime in on that at this point. But yes, we're going to make that call if we are 100% it's a blindside block, and then we just got to put the factors together. I don't know how much we're going to get involved in KCI though. To your point.
Well, it's not pretty if you try to. I can assure you.
All right. So did we cover the rules of the line of scrimmage on punt plays, or should we break that down too?
Yeah, let's dig into that.
I think it's funny though. No, for real, our line of scrimmage guys they're very particular on formations. And when do we see kicking teams really try to push the edge on formations? Because I think it's hard for those guys. A lot of those guys are really in the game to cover the kick. So maybe think about it. All of a sudden you're a right guard, but your job is actually to cover the kick. But you got to figure out how to line up on the line of scrimmage and maybe block for, like in the college game, you got to block for a period of time. And then, oh my gosh, do you have a rugby style kicker? Do you have a traditional kicker or what? But really, as a offensive lineman, quote unquote, in the kicking game, your job is to go cover the kick. So those guys try to get every advantage they can by lining up in the backfield. And I love our line of scrimmage guys who basically, I've seen it where they will write down the warning. They'll write down and we don't want to get in the habit of this, by the way, but they'll write down the warning on their game card that they're going to give the special teams coach about the alignment of the kicking team. And so that's kind of a funny joke.
Yeah, man, they just got to insert themselves any way they can.
No, but we see it a lot, and to the point where like, are we getting too lenient on that? I don't know. It'd be interesting to talk about what are we looking for from the kicking team. Do we allow them to kind of V back at tackles, or are we just basically free for all there? I feel like we want to enforce the rule as much as we can and be consistent, or else it's just going to turn into a free for all, isn't it?
Yeah, you see those. You really do, in all seriousness, where you've got a very significant space between the center's rear end and then even the next guy, the guard, which you never see the guard in the backfield on a scrimmage play, but
right.
On a punt play, you'll see the entire side of the line. And so that's a really genuine concern for the line of scrimmage guys, and kind of working through how they're going to officiate that and adjudicate that throughout the course of the game. It's that kind of old refrain where let's be proactive in pregame if we can. Let's talk to whether it's a special teams coach or whoever, if we get the opportunity to do that. And then if we see something that's borderline and making us a little uncomfortable early in the game, let's communicate like, coach, we know it's a punt, different scenario. We really need your guys up on the line. And then after that, let's make it rain.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Winkley's. I think he put a punctuation on the event. But Darren, we're just going to keep going. Daniel, I feel like that was a punctuation mark. I don't know what he's doing, but that's a punctuation mark. So Daniel, talk about KCI with targeting. I mean, what the heck? You didn't talk about KCI with targeting? What about when we put it on? Or how do you work through that emotionally? I mean, that's a big deal.
Man, I will tell you, I have yet to call KCI with targeting. I'm really disappointed. Looking forward to that. Had a play a few years ago where replay put on KCI, and ultimately what we had. Golly, that's a great point. How do you deal with that? Ultimately, what we had was a forearm to the head of the returner. Didn't feel like it really met the standard of KCI. Didn't have any indicators. But guess what? This was the first year that replay was able to put targeting on a play. Yeah, targeting on a play. So as a back judge who had a very clear picture of what happened, who even considered targeting on the field, to have replay come back and add it, man, my feeling was I clearly just missed something, right? Like I didn't process what I thought I processed. Now I've missed targeting. That's like the biggest foul in the history of football. That's a very uncomfortable feeling. So the connection for that is that doesn't have anything to do with KCI at all, but rather now that I've experienced this like kind of traumatic episode on the football field, guess what? We're halfway through the game and I've got to play to officiate on the next snap. So how do I move on from that? That is a discipline that you have to cultivate and continue to work towards and work on. So that's totally aside from the targeting play, but going back or from targeting and KCI, but going back to that idea, you really have to be still in that scenario. And if a side judge or a field judge wants to come in and say, you know, that felt like it might have been to the head. What do you think? That's very, very welcome information. So I don't know if that helps.
Well, I will tell you that I know a side judge, well, ex-side judge, and 99% of the time he has no idea what happened with that contact if the returner is in the middle of the field.
Yeah, he doesn't. I agree.
So if you're looking for some help from the side judge or field judge, you might not be getting it. Not too much of it, at least.
Yeah, no, and but on a serious note, don't let me misrepresent that. I'm not looking for help in that scenario.
No, I know you're not.
But because really, we can't as back judges expect for help on KCI unless a guy is being blocked into a returner. We're not looking for that at all. However, if you have something in that scenario, if we have a flag down for KCI and you've got a sense of it, would certainly welcome that help.
Right.
Keep talking. I got a question about play 2 from the referee and center judge position, which is really important, but you guys just keep talking.
What's your question?
Well, I'm trying to answer the question.
You can't pause the video, so I'm trying to do that.
I'm not pausing the video. I'm working through the play.
Okay.
Just keep talking.
We were done. Daniel was trying to fill up space. We
yeah.
were done.
No. Those are valid points.
So full disclosure, hang on. The question was texted to me, which I appreciate, but we can talk. Actually, we can answer number 2 right away, and then let me just load myself on this play. Number 2, the question was, how do I stay out of trouble talking about other things I see on field from other positions?
Oh.
So let's answer this question live, from a live perspective on the field, but then maybe from a self-evaluation, crew evaluation perspective off the field. So how do I stay out of trouble talking about other things I see on field from other positions? It's a really good question.
I think it starts with trust. It starts with trust. It starts with understanding who our crewmates are. It starts with understanding that our crewmates are well-intentioned. And it starts with us all having a belief in each other that we are good officials and we're working to work the game in the best and most efficient manner possible. Now, if I see something that was not necessarily in my area of concentration or area of responsibility, and I bring it to an official, I'm not going to run up to him and say, "Well, why did you miss? You missed that blindside block. We're looking at a blindside block on display. You missed that blindside block." What I would say is, "Hey, did you see the block by number 1 at the 35-yard line right as the play was ending?" And then we would begin a conversation from there. And if that official gets offended by me asking, "Hey, did you see such and such?" Then then we obviously have bigger problems than just missing a potential blindside block on the field. We need to really have that trust, and we need to have that belief in each other, and we need to support each other to make sure that we work the game as best as we can.
Yeah. And so, play 2, this is really interesting, and I don't know who the kicking team is. I think the receiving team is Texas Tech.
Montana State, aren't they the Grizzlies?
No, I mean, good try.
Bobcats.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Montana's the Grizzlies. Montana State Bobcats.
Guy's never worked an FCS game in his career.
I'm not one, just fast tracked. So, okay, let's talk about end zone view behind the kicking team. Referee, it's kind of like this shift catches your attention, and obviously, that's hugely important. But then everybody's going to become set. It's not a normal college scrimmage kick formation, which we want to understand because there might be gaps in protection, but really the punter's never threatened. Kick is off. I know we got to have attention with the kicker, but we can really move our vision right down. Man, and I feel like I'm playing the result on this because I know what happens. And it's so easy to talk about, I would have had that from the referee position. And I'm being very, very almost like boisterous about it. And I don't know if I would have had it live, but I just know that I am in the habit of getting my vision on a return that goes into my side of the field, getting my vision deep into an area between the numbers and the hash. And I always try to talk to myself about that from the referee position. So, Tim, I hope that answers your question, man. And if you disagree, that's okay. So personally, I think the trap we can get into here is maybe staying too far into the middle of the field and just watching players run. Okay. Again, it's so easy just to play the result because we know what happens after looking at the play 25 times. And so we're just trying to be real here. But if we're just watching players run in the middle of the field, that's really not where things happen. Things happen out in front, more as the return develops. And so I just think referees kick to your side, return going to your side. And honestly, this is a rare kick that this returner actually catches this ball in the middle of the field. How often does that happen, Daniel? I don't think very often. But either way,
Love it.
Yeah. Oh, you like it when he catches it in the middle of the field?
Yeah, because I don't have to move a lot, so I can keep that angle that I want to keep really easily.
Right. But it really doesn't.
To catch.
Aren't they trying to kick to this outside the hash most of the time?
That's what they want to do, yeah.
Yeah. So, as a referee, again, either kick, usually it's going to be a kick to your side, or to me, Texas Tech, the receiving team here, is setting up the return to your side. And we can sense that just the way the players flow and the way everything happens. Honestly, I look for the players out on the edge. See that guy raising his hand right there who actually delivers the blindside block? Man, I would hope to pick that up fast. That's right in my area. That's right where I want to be looking as a referee on this play. He just gives us away. And again, look, I know I'm playing the result. I've watched the play. It's not one time. I'm not seeing it for the first time as I keep talking through this, but I really would hope to recognize that body posture of him raising his hand and he's, what did people say? Carrying the brick. I mean, that's what he's doing. Look at him. Here we go. He's raising his hand and just levels the player. Clear and obvious, illegal blindside block, 2019 rules and beyond. And I don't know when this game was. We actually had plays, I think, back to 2017 tonight. So
we did.
Yeah. So, the blindside block rules, it's interesting when we keep talking about that. But this would only be a foul 2019 and beyond. 2018 and prior, this would be illegal, which is interesting. unless it was to the head and neck area. It's not.
Yeah. Brandy, you make a great point. I really appreciate this transparency that, and this is something we have to get in the habit of. And I think Tuta was alluding to this earlier, this idea of being kind of self-aware as we watch film, saying like, I don't know if that's where my eyes would have been on this play, but guess what? I think that's a great place for them to be. So now I can kind of use this as an instrument to talk to myself and grow towards, if I see something like this again, something similar in the future, that I can get my eyes somewhere. So being willing to go to that place where we're saying, I don't know that this is where I would be, but I think this is a great place for me to be. And I'd like to kind of pursue that and get to that place. That's just a great exercise for you as you continue to work through film and watch a lot of different actions and a lot of different plays.
Yep, that's right. So what
about leaping the shield plays?
Oh, leaping the shield, our favorite. I've called it once and was a big incorrect call.
Incorrect.
Yep. Incorrect. It is long, and which was good. I was one of those pioneers that called it like week 2 of the year the rule came out, which is always an interesting thing to do. But look, if you think you have it, you make the call and you live with the consequences. So the rule has evolved, leaping the shield, and this is a great play. You look at the end zone view from behind the kicking team, there is no shield. So talk about what if the player leaps right directly over 15? I guess that's still leaping the shield, technically, even though there's really not a shield. I'm not sure if a shield is even defined. Does anybody know?
It is. Well, the foul, I don't think the foul is leaping the shield, Brandon.
What is it?
I think it's leaping over a player. You can't leave your feet to leap directly over a player. I don't think it's leaping the shield. Hold on.
Oh, that's just what we announce. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
Yeah, well, I don't even know why you announced that either. That's a
well, it's not. I don't announce it. I've announced it.
Well, you did that time you threw the bad flag.
And it was incorrect. What's interesting is these players, how do you leap over the shield? I mean, so Tuta just mentioned it's leaping over a player. Yeah, Kevin.
Timeout.
What?
Here we go. FR 92.
Oh, here we go.
Hey, I love this. 9111B. It is a foul if a defensive player moves forward and tries to block a kick or apparent kick on a field goal or oh no, that's the wrong.
No, you're in the wrong. You're in the wrong section. I feel like
here we go. It's C. No, it's C. Here it is. I was just reading B. It should be
going well until you tried to reference the rules.
Yeah, I got the right one. It's a foul if a defensive player who is inside the tackle box tries to block a punt by leaving his feet and leaping into the plane directly above the frame of the body of an opponent. It does not say anything about shield.
That's interesting. And in fact, like we just talked about, Kevin, in the chat, LPS is our code. So we're almost preconditioned to call it leaping the shield. But like on this play we're looking at, if somebody leaps over number 15 in the white jersey in the backfield, that would be leaping the shield, quote unquote, because but he's got it.
It's just leaping. It's just leaping. Just say leaping. Why you have to say the shield?
Because that's look. You're gonna start to understand this, and I Kevin Boitman, get on the chat. Hell, get into the room. I don't care. Coach this dude on how this is gonna work, because these things start to form patterns in our mind. And when we see LPS as leaping the shield and we spend the whole summer talking about rule changes, guess what happens? It basically gets branded into our brain that the foul is leaping the shield. You see what I'm saying? I hear what you're saying. It's leaping.
No, I know it's late, Brandon. I'm
no, I know. I'm with you.
Being honorary.
I think it's actually a really good point.
So anybody notice that nobody in the kicking team has on a number 50 through 79?
Oh, are you changing? I didn't even make my point. You're changing topics already?
Oh no, I thought you were done. You talked for about 30 minutes. I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
I didn't talk about 30 minutes. I was transitioning topics, so I think my timer should reset.
Oh, go ahead. All right, sure.
He's. I think Boitman pretty much covered it in the chat, though.
Kevin nailed it.
Yeah, I
Kevin
think he pretty much
nailed it.
nailed it. All right, so let's talk about scrimmage kick formation, and I'll be back in 90 seconds.
What?
Scrimmage kick formation. Nobody's wearing number 50 through 79. Tutak, come on, babe.
Oh, I was just talking about numbering exception. I didn't care about. Oh, what defines a scrimmage kick formation?
Well, sure.
Oh, I'm not that.
And then tie it into the numbering exception and how we manage that as umpire, center, judge, referee, and what you're thinking about.
Well, the good thing I'm seeing is that nobody's in a 3-point stance, so I don't even have to worry about, okay, can this dude shift? Can he pick his hand up? Can he not? Because we got everybody in the 2-point stance, so anybody can shift to wherever they want to shift to without us having to worry about, okay, he has an eligible number on, but he's in an ineligible position, so he can't lift his hand up off the ground if they decide to shift to another formation. Scrimmage kick formation, what is it, 9 yards? You need to have a player in 9 yards back, and it has to be obvious that they're going to attempt a kick. I think that was changed a couple years ago. What else we want to talk about? I don't know.
Kevin probably knows. Let's talk about this in all seriousness. This is a good conversation. Let's talk about eligible beginning, starting as ineligible and then becoming eligible. Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to articulate that. So thinking about the numbering exception, if we're an exception and we start out in the formation, we're covered up, we're ineligible. How do we work? What's the mechanics to get that right?
I think you just need to make sure that if the hand is on the ground, then you got some thinking to do. If nobody's hand is on the ground, then there's really no thinking to do because everybody can shift wherever they want to shift. If it's a smooth shift, if the hand is not on the ground. Unless I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I think you're good. Just my point was, and I don't know, maybe this will make it into one of our rule sessions we have left, that when that scrimmage kick formation, if a guy is a numbering exception and he gets locked in and he's ineligible, and then we have a shift that changes to where he becomes eligible.
That's correct.
That's an illegal formation.
Yes.
That's right.
Somebody asked a question about the clock.
That's a good question.
Chris asked a question about the clock, including my watch on the field. So, Chris, you can tune in to Deep Wing Mechanics, and I'm gonna answer your question right now. But I also want to let you know, Deep Wing Mechanics, we're gonna go through A to Z of Deep Wing Mechanics, including I have already typed out my pre-snap routine. So I'm going to talk about my pre-snap routine. And 3 times in my pre-snap routine, I look at the clock, at least 3 times. And I'm kind of nuts, so I look at the clock maybe more than that a lot of times if there's nothing really going on. But as soon as the play is over, if I'm the covering official, I can easily kill the clock with my hands and then look up to the game clock to see what the time is. And I'm just going to bank that time. I'm not going to stare at the clock. I'm going to bank that time, look up real quick. Okay, 6:13, and then go back to doing whatever it is that I'm doing. If there is a threat on the field and I'm the covering official, I need to clear the threat before I look at the clock. The first thing I'm going to do is finish the play. And if it's a situation where I need to go into the bench, if I need to get a player out, if there's some action going on the field that takes my attention away, then I may not see the clock at all. But what I would hope is every play, I know what the clock should be at the snap, or at least have some idea of what the clock is at the snap. And then I would know, okay, each play is about 7 seconds long. By the time this play is over, punt plays are probably a little longer than that, maybe 10 seconds. So whatever the clock was at the snap, it should be about 10 seconds less by the time I look up. Now, if we got all kind of other stuff going on, then, I need to clean up other stuff. Then I look and I need to maybe just make an adjustment there. Now, in terms of a watch on the field, I do not use my watch on the field, and I may not be the right person to ask. You may want to ask someone else how they do that, because I do not stop the clock using my watch on the field, because the game clock, in my opinion, is the game clock. And if something needs to be adjusted, I'm not going to look at my watch and say, oh, we need to change the game clock to what my watch says, because I don't believe that that's the way we should work it. I personally just work the actual game clock that's in the stadium, and that's the clock that I use as the official time, and I'm checking it 3-4 times every single play. But that was a good question. Hopefully I answered it. Hopefully that answered your question.
So, but okay, we can quit talking about punts. I mean,
Yeah, I guess
805
we've transitioned.
So, I mean,
Well,
hang on. So you're talking about your wristwatch. This always has bugged me. I've seen more examples than I care to see of officials who think they have to keep time of the game, and they almost emphasize that mechanic over either dead ball officiating, communicating with another official,
Right.
maybe even ball
Right.
mechanics, although that's kind of on the same level. Like ball mechanics are pretty much meaningless.
Yeah, they're useless.
With regard-
We don't need to worry about the ball.
So, I mean, gosh, isn't that wristwatch mechanic kind of like obsolete? And it's not obsolete, but it's how important is that really?
In my opinion, it's not important at all. Now, there are going to be people that disagree, and they may have a better perspective on it than I do. But in my opinion, that is a useless mechanic, because at what point in time are you going to look at your watch on your wrist and change the clock that's on the scoreboard to match your wrist? Or are you going to end up changing, which is what normally happens 99.9% of the time, the official who keeps the watch on their wrist, they change their wristwatch to match the scoreboard. So if you're going to do that anyway, why not just use the scoreboard?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I would think about is we have a dead clock. We're coming out of a dead clock. All right. And then maybe we have a false start or something.
Yep.
And the clock operator unfortunately runs seconds off.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, you did not adequately index that dead clock time in your mind. Maybe then, but again, you've already adjusted your clock to probably what the scoreboard was after the previous dead ball. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. So first thing, Brandon, that is what we cover when we talk to our clock operators pregame. And I'll try to make sure I also have a copy of my pregame that I have with the clock operators. That's the first thing that I cover with them. Not the first thing, but that's one of the main things I cover with them. Do you write the clock stoppages down? Actually, I don't even ask that. I say, who writes the clock stoppages down? Because I don't want to ask them if they do it, because I need them to understand that somebody needs to be doing it. So then we talk about, okay, most of the time they say, yes, I write the clock stoppages down. I say, okay, are you the person that adjusts the game clock, or are you, or someone else? And most of the time it's the person sitting next to them. They say, oh no, someone else does it, but I'm sitting right next to them. So I say, okay, so if we are slow to stop a clock on a false start, are you going to automatically make the adjustment, or do you need us to make the announcement? And they say, oh, no, I'll go ahead and fix it. So before we even get onto the field, this is 2 hours before the game, we've already addressed the issue that you had. And then once we get on the field, if I am doing my job and we have a dead clock, I know exactly what that dead clock is. So if we lose time, I should be able to immediately get on the 020 or run in and tell the referee, nope, it needs to be 3:22. We lost however many seconds.
And I get the whole idea about differing. This is going to be a really funny statement. I get the whole idea about differing capabilities because of D2, D3, JUCO. But guys,
I don't want to hear it. No.
We have the worst clock operators in the country.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear I work in D2 and they don't live. I don't want to hear that.
It's the same everywhere.
Yeah. If you're doing that, then what you're saying is that I'm not a good enough side judge to make sure that I give a good pregame, and I'm not a good enough side judge to watch the game clock to do my job. And I'm not going to sit here and blame a D2 clock operator. That's BS. We're not going there. No, we can't go that route. Our job as a side judge, field judge, and well, I guess you want to throw the line judge, but I don't depend on them. I know we still got David Young in the room, but I don't depend on them. I'm going to work the clock. My job is to work the clock, and I will work the clock every single game to the best of my capabilities. I don't care who's on. Ray Charles can be working the clock up there.
Which
Me
we
and Ray
love.
Charles are
We
going to
love
have
Ray
a really
Charles,
good.
by the way. Those of us associated with Virus Virtual Clinic love Ray Charles.
Oh, absolutely. Ray Charles and I are going to have a really good pregame, and I'm going to ask Ray Charles, hey, Ray, who's your spotter? Who's going to tell you when to click that button to stop it? I don't care if he's blind, but he's going to have somebody, and we're going to talk about everything, and we are going to work the clock. So let's not use an excuse. I work in D2. I work in D3. I don't want to – let's not even go that route.
I think we're on the same – and I understand the perspective, but – and it's easy for us, I guess, to talk differently. But look, we have so many clock issues every single game of every single season. It's just, it's really tough. But, and then malfunctioning clocks, Wink, I don't know. I mean, look, how many games have you actually had malfunctioning clocks? I would throw back. I
can answer that question.
We've had some, but I haven't.
Question.
But I'm just going to say, from my perspective, before I throw it back, I haven't had a differing proportional amount based on the level. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I work whatever level I work, and I've had the same amount of, malfunctioning clocks from a proportions perspective.
I've had as a side judge who works the clock, and I like to think that my goal is to be the best clock official in the world, not the country, not the state, not the conference, but the world. That's my goal. I've had the clock malfunction one time and had to actually keep the clock on my wrist. One time I just finished my 11th year. One time. And that's well over 100-something games, so that's less than 1% of the time that the clock actually malfunctions. And we got the clock back working in short order.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. I've had one game clock malfunction, and I was the line judge, and it was back in the day when the line judge, we needed more responsibilities from the line of scrimmage. I guess the deep guys couldn't handle it at that time. They hadn't evolved. So the line judge had it, and so I kept the clock on my wrist for literally 1/4 of a quarter. And then last year we did have a play clock go out for the first 5 minutes of the game. And that's about it. I mean, all other clock errors I would attribute to us on the field because we didn't catch the errors of our clock operators.
That's correct.
Oh, I've got a question. So what about, let's say we have a free kick situation and we kill the clock stops appropriately, we check the clock, just saying we as in whoever, right, as a back judge, I check the clock stops. So we've got team A coming on, ready to snap the ball. You know it's going to start on the snap, but then just and this could happen in any situation. The clock just starts for some reason. The referee starting the 25-second play clock is probably what initiated, and the clock starts before the ball is even snapped. Like what kind of tips, or how do we catch that kind of start where it's not one of those, okay, it's a dead ball, let's everybody look at the clock when we're supposed to, and that's kind of a natural thing for us, but like, how do we get it in those weird moments when the clock's not supposed to start or stop?
Yeah, and that just goes back, and the scenario you're giving is the actual real world scenario, and I learned a lot from that play, which drove me to catalog the actual clock time.
I wish you would have done that before.
Well, I know. But what I used to do is just say, okay, the clock is supposed to be stopped, it's stopped. The clock is supposed to be running, it's running. I no longer do that. What I do now is I catalog the actual time on the clock, so that when I go back to look in my 50th time during my pre-snap routine, look at the clock again, it better still be what it was supposed to be before. So I'm a lot better from a side judge perspective now because I catalog the actual time.
That's great.
On the clock.
That's great. I'm glad that you're a lot better now.
Well, I have a lot more room to grow, and I'm sure I'll be growing as we progress throughout this 2020 season, if we have a season.
Yeah, I mean, you keep tuning in to virus-free virtual clinics. after dark, and I think that's a good expectation that you'll continue to grow.
Daniel, who do we talk about getting overtime? Because
yes,
yeah, who do we talk to about that?
Yeah. I don't know, but we'll figure out. There's an HR department. There's some forms to fill out. I think we'll be well compensated.
Hey, I think we need to bring in. So David Young is talkative.
Oh my gosh!
I don't think he's. I was going to say annoying, but I chose not to use that word.
Even though internally you did.
No. I just said talkative. What his point of view is, if I'm paraphrasing properly, but I'm sure I think he knows how to operate.
Hey, David Young, raise your hand. See at the bottom underneath slides on the left.
You gotta enable it. Okay.
Oh, never mind.
Oh boy.
Oh wow. Come on, guys.
I mean, seriously, you just did
Go.
that. Like, come on.
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
Oh, you did. Okay. So he's talkative, but he's not annoying. Here's the deal. Yeah, Joe, door prizes. Look, that's when we get down to 20 people left. We're losing.
10.
Oh, 10. Oh, you didn't come through with the funding? Shit. Shoot.
Yeah, no. I mean, that was the initial proposal, and then after everything shook out, we had a coronavirus, so it ended up with being 10.
Right. Okay. David is proposing that. Look, as a line of scrimmage guy who keeps the clock, I don't have time to actually look at the clock. I'm working plays. I'm getting spots. I'm dead ball officiating. I'm doing, I think, and David, just keep typing because I've got the feeling that you're pretty good. I bet you're at like 150 words a minute by now, based on how much you type in the chat. So
with multiple errors.
Right. So you got to subtract. You subtract for that. It's down to actually 100.
There's a few typos, but I think his overall point is why is this so hard to keep the game time on your wristwatch as a side judge or field judge when you basically don't have as many the whole portfolio of duties that the line of scrimmage guy has as the play ends?
Great question.
I know
it's totally unnecessary, and I would like to ask.
It's not unnecessary. It's not unnecessary. It's a fair question.
No,
yeah.
but
I know another line judge who feels similarly to David, and in fact that he used that in a game a few years ago in the postseason to add like a significant amount of time to the clock after the game, but I don't know, Tutai, you were going there, so I probably just interrupted you. Sorry about that. But isn't the response is that if you're really good at checking the clock on the dead ball and live ball, that you don't have to go back to your wrist?
I'm just wondering, at what point in time do we use the watch on our wrist to adjust the stadium clock? Because there is no way the clock on your wrist matches the stadium clock. It just doesn't. So at what point in time are we going to make the adjustment to the stadium clock based on the clock on the wrist? Or are we never going to do that? We're just going to keep adjusting our clock on the wrist to match the stadium clock. I'm talking during dead ball periods, timeout periods, when we look and we say, oh, shoot, my watch says 10:28, but the stadium clock says 10:22. Are we going to go to the referee and say we need to put 10:28 on the clock, or are we going to change our wristwatch to say 10:22? I think I know the answer to that, but I'll let Mr. Young answer that.
So he had a comment here that, and I think it was actually genuine, although it's a little sarcastic. But I kind of know him a little bit. He says, "I honestly did not know the deeps looked at the clock that much."
Well, I don't know if we do. I'm nuts though. Okay. I'm kind of crazy. I'm a little crazy.
Well,
Utah is very good on the clock. I will, relative to the rest of the nation. And
I would just offer that. Let's see. I'm just trying to think real quick before I say something stupid. So I think no, that's not true. That's not true. The last couple side judges and field judges that I've worked with are very what would I say, detail oriented about looking at the clock, and I really, really appreciate that. Even if they present situations where they're wrong, and that's okay too.
Okay. I was just asked if you've always appreciated that. And then also secondarily, I would ask if you've always expressed that appreciation
Never.
verbally.
Never.
Yeah, hang on. Anal's a good word, Mike Carney. I appreciate that. Now, here's the deal. Let's talk about 5x5 axiom.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's the most misunderstood axiom. Well, that's probably going too far. But it is very misunderstood, Tuta, in terms of officiating and how we actually manage the clock. 5x5 axiom, go.
Yes. So basically, anytime more than 5 seconds go off the clock, and we say anytime, but obviously there's no such thing as black and white. There's no absolutes. Anytime more than 5 seconds goes off the clock during any point in the game, we want to adjust the game clock. Or anytime under 5 minutes, when 1 second goes off the clock, we want to adjust the game clock. Now, I subscribe to the 5x5 axiom, but I'm not strictly subscribing to the 5x5 axiom. Obviously, if it's 42-3 and there's 3 minutes left in the game and the clock operator went to sleep and we lost 6 seconds on a play, I'm probably going to act like I didn't see that. Because, I mean, come on, we got to use some common sense at some point in time. Now, if it's the first quarter, it's 10:48, play goes out of bounds, I see the line judge kill the clock, and then it goes all the way to 10:44, I'm probably not going to come in there and say nothing about that either, just because it's not that big a deal. But you need to know, and a lot of times what you'll be able to find out is some clock operators like to quote unquote steal time. So you'll notice.
What is up with that?
I have no idea, but they'll go
I have a
slow
question.
sometimes. And then, so now when it's a critical moment in the game, now you can go in there and adjust the clock when you need to. But in general, that's what the 5x5 axiom is. But we just need to be smart about when we make adjustments to the game clock. Let's say a coach calls timeout in the first quarter and he called it's at 6:52. We look up at the clock, it's 6:52, and the clock operator, he didn't notice, it goes down to 6:50. I'm not going to come tell a referee, okay, he actually called it at 6:50. I mean, that just, it doesn't make sense to do it at that point. But I still want to know that, yeah, it actually was 6:52, but we went down to 6:50. So it's just a matter of being aware. And I think more of it is, I come out of a game with a headache just because I'm aware of the clock. How often do I actually go in there and make a change to the clock? Very rarely. I think I did it 4 times last year, and 1 time was really stupid. But
yeah, I was just going to ask you about that time, but first I want Daniel to ask his question.
Yeah, I cannot wait for you to ask about that time, and then I have a follow up for that. But before we get there, Tuta, you mentioned earlier about having that pregame with the clock operators. Help me understand. Do you find a correlation between the quality of that pregame and clock operator performance? And then let's say you do, then it becomes very obvious why that's an important conference. But let's say you don't, right? Let's say that you go through all of these steps and you don't find an appreciable difference between the way the clock operator performs across multiple games. What's the relevance of doing that? Why do we continue to harp on that and continue to do that as officials?
So I guess to answer the first question, weirdly enough, I don't necessarily find a correlation. I would not say there's no correlation, but it's not necessarily a correlation. There are times when we've had a really good pregame with the clock operator, and the clock operator goes and just lays an egg on the clock. They've had times when I'll come back from the pregame conference with the clock operator. I say, oh boy, we're in trouble tonight. And then the clock operator has no issues. So weirdly enough, but in general, an engaged clock operator and a clock operator that really knows what he or she is doing. In fact, I'm saying he or she because to me, the best clock operator in the Big 12 is actually a female. And I know we think this is a male-dominated officiating thing that we do, but the best clock operator in the Big 12, in my opinion, is a female. But if he or she is engaged and really is into the pregame, I, I think we'll have a good chance of having a good clock operated during the game. Now, if they are not engaged and you're asking why do we do it anyway, even if there's no correlation, well, I need to get myself prepared and I need to make sure that I'm ready to work the game, and that helps me work the game by just having that pregame conference. And it gets to be boring sometimes. It gets to be redundant. By the time we get to week 11, I've seen the same clock operator maybe 3 times, and we may just have a conversation. And this is what I did late in the season last year. We just walked out onto the field. A lot of times we'll do it in the locker room, but then I said, let's just go walk out on the field. Let's have a conversation on the field. We just kind of talk football a little bit, and we pointed out some of the clocks, and that actually was some of my best pre-games with clock operators was on the field, 3 hours before the game when we go walk the field.
I like the technique of changing the environment for that meeting. You can actually reinforce concepts by taking them out on the field. And I know that I think the back judge does the same thing with the play clock operators. They have their meeting and it can get totally redundant. And man, when we mess up the play clock, I know all you guys like to think about the game clock a lot, but coaches really, really pay attention to the play clock. They don't pay attention to the game clock too much until we're, under 2 minutes or whatever it is based on game situation. The play clock is damn near every play. And so a poor play clock, and again, we do not blame clock operators. It is our job to make sure those guys operate the clock based on the expectations we set forth. As a conference, as a program, in the pregame, when do you guys meet with them? 2.5 hours, whatever it is. And so one technique that I heard that was really good by a back judge, and Daniel, I can't remember if this was you or another back judge, he actually, when he takes the fields, you're supposed to take the field at 60 minutes, but some back judges take the field at like 45 minutes or whatever the case is.
Listen, there's extenuating circumstances.
Well, hang on. Go through your go through some signals with the play clock operator. Make it reset, reset to 25, reset to 40. Do it actually on the field with him up in the booth, and I think that's a good extension of the pregame meeting.
Yeah, that's me. I do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Every time I ask him when I walk out on the field, let me see it count down from 40 and then from 25. Here's the thing, Darren. If it turns into 90 minutes, I think the back judge really needs to stay in the locker room for those 30 minutes to make sure the balls are just legal. Some referees ask you to record that information in the wake of the Deflategate. So I think the rest of you guys out there 90 minutes and the rest of us being back judges continue just to officiate the balls and make sure they're ready to go and legal. So Brandon,
are you making excuses or?
No. I'm just saying how the new, we like to focus on new rules this time of the year, how that's going to be officiated practically. So let's talk real quick about the clock. A side judge comes in, any official really, and tries to reset the clock inappropriately. How are you going to respond to that as a referee? How do you keep your cool, make your official feel validated, but also kind of get back to the business at hand?
Well, it really depends on the situation and the chemistry you've developed with a side judge. I mean, if you understand his personality and he's fragile, then you might need to literally tell him on the spot to go bleep himself. But that's not necessarily true either. So I think it's a case-by-case basis.
If he's fragile, that's what you want to say?
Well, he is. In the case that you were bringing up.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
I mean, look, the side judges, we love the side judges as referees. Gosh, because honestly, it's impossible to track the clock every second of the clock. It's so impossible to track it from the referee position. Let's just face it. The referees have a lot going on, very important to the administration of the game. Okay, I'll just stop there. No,
you said the referee?
Yeah.
Who did you say?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Which
But
you
if I remember.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's easy to lose track of the clock from the referee position, whether you're announcing fouls, you're trying to work through replay situations, whatever it is. Officials have certain rulings on the field, and you got to make sure you communicate that through the microphone so that, you know, the replay capabilities are maximized to their extent and everything like that. It's very easy to lose track of the clock. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it really, really is. And so we really, I tell you what, every time somebody comes in to talk about resetting the clock or whether the clock should be running or not, man, I just really, really appreciate that.
Well, not every time. Not every time. So let's stop that. Not every time.
I know. I was gonna have you expand on that point.
So I guess I will expand on that point. Thank you, Brandon. There are times when, so as a side judge, we're on one side of the field. We don't always see the signals from other officials.
And there's times when side judges are wrong. Let's just make sure
that's rare. But there are times when we can't necessarily see all of the signals from the other officials. So we have to make a judgment to determine, okay, did someone stop the clock? Did someone not stop the clock? Okay, I'm watching. How long is this clock going to run before somebody does something? And then it's very scary to go in and just shut a whole game down and to go run in and tell the referee, man, the clock didn't stop. We need to reset the clock to X, Y, Z. It's scary because, number one, you don't know if you're doing the right thing or not. Yeah. But at some point in time, if we got to just step out there and decide, okay, well, I got to stop this game. But the important thing is, when we're observing, take note of the clock. When you hear a whistle, okay, you got the clock. I'm talking action is on the other side of the field, or action is not in the area where the side judge has a lot of dead ball activity to work. Note the clock immediately. Continue to watch the rest of the officials. If someone had killed the clock and you know the clock is still running, well, you still already have that time in your head. And then you can notice, did someone wind the clock back up? Sometimes some referees wind the clock really quickly. So there'll be times when, especially if it's a play up the middle, the clock would stop. You know, normally officials will kill the clock for a first down. Then the referee will just wind the clock back up before the clock even get a good chance to stop. So then you're sitting there watching, you're like, wait a minute, we never stopped the clock. When we did stop the clock, but the referee started back up. So it's a lot of little tiny nuances to figure out, okay, now it's time for me to go in there and actually say something because we really have a problem versus, well, we might have a problem and we lost 2-3 seconds. Okay, I'll just have to swallow that one and we'll talk about that one at halftime.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think, Tutai, your point about it being a scary thing is a valid point. And I'll first say, when you do that and you step out onto that ledge and then you get verbally berated by your referee, how does that impact future instances of you stepping out on that ledge and being willing to go to that place?
Sure. Now, obviously it hurts for future instances when you need to step up and help the crew and help the referee. But not only that, it could affect your performance in future plays. So I had a situation in the very recent past when that happened, when I stepped out on the ledge to go and make an adjustment to the clock. It wasn't well received. Well, guess what happened 2 plays later? I had an error on a punt play, a big error on a punt play, because I was still, I think, in my head, still processing the fact that my attempt to help the crew wasn't very well received, and I was no longer focused on what I needed to do. So then I made a mistake on the next play because I'm still thinking about what happened on the previous play. So I will take that when now I'm a referee, obviously. So I'm going to take all of that type of stuff into consideration and realize if someone comes in and they're stopping the game, they're probably a little nervous about stopping the game because, first of all, everybody's looking at them and like, what the hell is going on? What is this dude doing? So I need to maybe make it a situation where, okay, I understand you're stopping the game. Let me know what's going on, and maybe be a little bit more welcoming and receptive to what information they want to bring. Unless it's some foolishness, then we have to deal with that separately.
Yeah.
Well, if it's foolishness, then all bets are off.
Like,
But I
moment off, and we're restarting the clock in
Right.
practice. Seems like
two things come to mind that I think are actually relevant. The first is, man, we can't stress enough how important it is to be. Luke just came in and said he has 3 Band-Aids on his boo-boo. How important it is to be. Yeah. One scraped knee, 3 Band-Aids. How important it is to be on top of those administrative things that. And I will tell you that there was a time in my career where I took that for granted and felt like my value to the crew was on those big DPI plays or those big blindside block plays. But how important it is to really value and practice intentionality relative to all of those administrative things. And that can be the down, the distance, the play clock, the game clock. We just can't oversell that enough because – listen, we're going to miss things from time to time, and we can apply rationale to missing certain things. We cannot ever excuse missing those administrative things. And Tuta said that earlier about how we're responsible for the clock, and how we just can't ever excuse that. And then the second thing I would say that I thought Tuta said was really poignant was, stepping out on that ledge and being willing to say, this isn't right? We need to fix this. And the only way that you can do that if you're zoned in, focused into that degree, because that engenders confidence where I've officiated this whole game and I'm locked in on down and distance and clock and play clock. And that's the only way that you have the confidence to come in and say, look, we need to fix this. But again, if you can be that official on your crew, man, your value is just is immeasurable, and you really have the potential to take. And it may not ever materialize, right? You may go through the whole season,
right.
Needs that, but at some point that value is going to be exhibited, and you're going to save a game or save a crew, and just can't speak enough about that.
Well, I mean, every
so
crew,
Daniel. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Brandon.
No, I was just going to say every crew has. Forget about one situation. Every crew during a season has multiple situations where they get, to the pregame next week and they say, "Dang it! If somebody would have just stepped up," or really, what you really want to hear is, "Ah, man, if I would have just brought that information to the crew." That's what you want to hear. And if we're honest with ourselves, that happens 5, 6, 10, 12, maybe 15 times a season. Those are the people that we want to work with. Those are the people we want to work with. Obviously we want you to do it in real time. We want that information to be brought to us in real time during the game so we get it right. But beyond that, if it's an opportunity to learn and improve, take the situation for what it is and just own it in the moment and say, man, that was my responsibility. Look, next time that happens, I'm going to bring that information into the crew so that we get the play right. And, forget about the clock. I mean, it could be anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Brandon, and Daniel touched on it. How many flags do we throw a year? So, you maybe throw last
14.3 a game. 14.3
right.
a game in the Big 12.
Last year, I think I threw 17 flags. Well, there's 200 plays in a game. So if you throw 17 flags in a season and you have 200 plays in a game times, let's say you work 12 games. Well, okay, I'm not good at math that quick.
No.
2,400, right? So you got
24. Maybe the abacus, whatever you need.
Yeah, so it's 2,400 opportunities to do something administrative versus 17 times where you actually throw a flag. To Daniel's point about thinking that, this is the best time for me to be an official is to throw a DPI. Well, shoot, I think I had 2 DPIs last year, and I worked 16 games, and I think I threw 2 DPI flags.
Yeah, and how many DPI plays did you study?
Right, exactly.
I mean, hundreds, hopefully thousands.
Well, not thousands last year, thousands over the course of my.
There's a lot of factors into your study, but that's okay. No, you did. You studied thousands. Trust me.
I have. You're right,
Yeah.
but not last year. It was my point.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
You
If you didn't quite grasp what the term year means.
I was actually trying to help you out.
God, guys, we just
Admitting
lost.
We did. We just lost 10 people.
Damn it.
That's okay. We still got 79. Let's keep going. We've got 16 minutes
16
until the room
minutes.
expires. If Tutah wasn't so cheap, we could keep going for hours, but we only ponied up for a 3-hour session.
Oh, wow.
Talk about, let's see, Michael said, oh no, Ryan said, sideline control. So this is interesting. Differing referees have differing, why am I saying the word differing so much? So referees have differing thoughts on sideline control in terms of like how much they want to be involved versus how much they really want their sideline officials to kind of control that. So, I don't think Daniel has too much to offer, frankly, to talk. So talk about how much, when you get into a situation where you've got a coach who's emotional, he's got a differing viewpoint from maybe perhaps the conclusion Daniel. No.
I got one thing.
What?
Well, similar to a referee, like when I'm in the middle of the field, if you can't take care of your business over there, like it's a problem. Like I've had to instruct deep wings that if they couldn't keep their guy off of my field, I would throw that flag from the middle of the field. And so
that's not where we're going.
Oh,
so, Tutah, talk about, you've got a coach who has a differing, viewpoint of the conclusion we came to on the field with whatever the call was. So, I mean, are you going to call the referee over? Are you going to talk to him? How do you manage that coach?
Right. So, and it depends on the coach. Obviously, different coaches have different personalities.
Yes.
Different coaches react differently. But I think the number one thing that we have to do is be honest with the coach. Sometimes we actually miss something. We actually screw something up. And we need to just tell the coach, coach, if it happened the way you said it did, then we missed it. Or, coach, especially if it's something that I screwed up on, I'll just flat out tell them, yes, I missed that one. And they'll get mad, but eventually they'll respect the fact that you're honest with them. Also, if they want information, we need to give them the information that they want. It may not be able to get it to them immediately. We may need to get it to them 3-4 plays later. But if you tell them and they ask a question and they want information and you tell them, okay, I'll let you know, you better give them that information because they're expecting you to give that information. Now, in terms of diffusing negative situations, the best thing to do is just stand there and let the coach blow off steam, in my opinion. Other people may handle things differently. And most of the time, coaches are not personal and they're not being negative or derogatory towards you. Once it becomes into a really caustic and hostile environment, I would just remove myself from the situation. But 9 times out of 10, a coach is just angry because they feel like you just screwed something up. And if you did, admit you did. If you didn't, say, coach, if it happened the way you did, then the way you said it did, then we missed it. And then, just move on.
Yeah, I agree. And, so that's when it gets heated. We want to establish communication early. I mean,
yes.
Obviously, so I don't know. I can't remember if we're consistent nationally with how we do the coaches meetings. I feel like some conferences do them differently. Some do them at 75, some do them at 90. Some send the line of scrimmage people, some send the referee and umpire. Okay, here's how we do it. So I'll just talk about how we do it. We send the referee and umpire, and we go to home team coach first at 90 minutes. And I mean, the goal, honestly, the goal of the meeting is to be quick, but it's to establish rapport, And so, like Tuta said, I think we get to know these coaches' personalities a little bit, so we know how. We kind of know in general how the meeting's going to go based on the coach that we have. But here's what I like to do as a referee. I mean, when we've got a volatile coach, some coaches are literally low maintenance, and you just get to know them, and you almost just have to let them roll. If you don't know the head coach, just kind of let it roll and see how they're going to be. Some coaches establish themselves as low maintenance, and that's kind of nice, honestly, but some coaches don't. So what I like to do with the coaches that don't is, if I get an opportunity, I do like to go over and just mention a very positive thing that occurred relative to one of their players. What would that be? I mean, it could be a host of different things. It could be, their top defensive lineman had a great pass rush, and the quarterback, the opposing quarterback just so happened to release the ball in time. And that top defensive lineman, who I already know is an All-American, I mean, he led up and he could have absolutely crushed the quarterback into the ground, but he gave me body language to show that he avoided, punishing that quarterback. And maybe I'll just tell him, man, unbelievable rush by your All-American defensive lineman, and even a greater job to avoid getting some type of, really cheap roughing the passer foul. So I just thought he did a great job. And they appreciate that stuff. Now, look, guess what? If they think we missed the next big DPI call that gives the opposing team first and goal on the 2-yard line, how much stock is that, what I just did there, given a positive remark? How much stock are they going to put in that? 0. But maybe, perhaps, we've actually opened up the lines of communication, established a little bit of rapport, so that when I initiate a conversation that's positive, at least I have a smidge morsel of credibility, to actually carry on a conversation that maybe isn't so positive. So I don't know, Tuta. I mean, that's a technique I try to use. I execute it, quite frankly, not great. I mean, it's very hard to execute that because I'm looking for positive remarks, and I don't want to be fake with it. I want to try to be, authentic, but at the same time, I do like to establish rapport that's positive. So I don't know if that helps you sideline guys or not, and maybe you don't even care.
I literally don't care what you talk to the coach about,
I
because
know.
my relationship with the coach is my relationship, and I literally don't care what you talk to him about.
Yeah, and that, honestly, that's what I figured. I mean, it is, again, how do I say it? I think the referee's relationship with the coach is just different than the folks wearing the black hat, and I know that's going to sound.
It is. No, it is. It's true. It is.
So I mean,
absolutely, I agree.
It's tough. It's tough, and especially when you come in as a new referee, it's like, I mean, these guys literally give you signals in the 90-minute meeting, in the 60-minute walk around.
Right.
If you've made a call in one of their previous games, these guys give you signals of their trust or lack thereof in what you're going to do for the next 3.5, 4 hours. Right. It's an interesting psychological experiment to go through, with all these different coaches who are literally, and I mean, we're talking about different levels here, but at some of the levels we work, these guys are making $5, $6, $7, $10 million a year, and this is literally their livelihood at a very high level. So it's really, really very interesting.
Well, yeah, but I think on the flip side, and I think we owe it to ourselves to be true to ourselves, regardless of what type of feeling or energy that we're getting from that opposing coach, we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to the game of football. We're hired to work the game of football. We're not hired to work for that coach. So we're hired to officiate the game. And I think we owe it to ourselves to put our best foot forward, regardless of what type of energy we're getting from the coach. And I think the coach will respect us, even because some coaches, when they're being not the most kind and understanding person in the world, they know that they're flying off the hook a little bit. And I think they have a greater respect for us if we stand tall and we stay true to our values and our beliefs and what we came to bring to the game. And I think they have a healthy respect for us, even if they disagree with what we're doing and what we're talking about and what our judgments are on the field.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say, what I've heard you say in the past, Tuta, is when a coach is being an ass, I think is the vernacular.
Since we're under 100 people, we can use whatever language we want?
Yeah.
Once we talk under 100, we can
use worse language with 400 people.
any four-letter word under 100 people.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, can we just focus on things that are really when we think about the substance of the games and the things that really matter? There's a question in here about marking the balls. For
the love of
okay, I'm gonna drop off for 2 seconds, and Daniel will be talking for 30 minutes about this foolishness. I'll be back. Excuse me if
I've been on a crew with some back judge, and I mean, he takes 2.5 hours to mark the football. 2.5 hours.
Like, fuck it, let's just keep going. And they love it. So
if your marker's not working well, you have to have backups. And then if you don't have a backup, you have to go find a backup from another crewmate, hoping they're prepared. But here's the thing: if you've ever had a wing official or an umpire throw you a ball that was ill inflated or not appropriate for the game, that's an empty feeling. And so you just have to make sure in the pregame that you pump all those balls up to the correct. And if you've ever had a referee who is super, super good at his job and made you record the PSI of each ball, I would just encourage you to find a new referee if you can.
Let's just be honest. Can we be honest? After Deflategate, it put a little bit of fear.
There's a little attention,
trepidation into what we were talking about. I mean, so for a period of what, Daniel? 2, 3, maybe 4 years, maybe not 4, but I think 2 or 3. We literally marked every ball uniquely. At least Daniel told me he did. And
we did.
We recorded the PSI in a Google spreadsheet because we did not. I mean, we think we're really important, but who knows? Who knows what games we're going to work? We implement processes, as hopefully you've seen in these virus-free virtual clinics. We are huge on process, so we were implementing processes to basically hedge ourselves against another ball pressure scandal. Because who knows? If Tom Brady's deflating footballs, allegedly, I don't know that to be true, and I'm not about to talk about that. But if somebody in the NFL's deflating footballs to match, to match their preference for how they want to throw the ball, why would a college quarterback not do that? And that was the essence of why we implemented that. And so we could actually show a log for 2, maybe 3 years of every PSI of every football we tested. And normally Daniel tested those about 4 minutes prior to the game. Did you ever actually come out for a pregame 60 minutes after?
That's not true. That's not true. It's not true, guys. 75 of people out there are getting the wrong impression about how I tested the ball. That's not appropriate.
Are we still talking about marking the balls and testing the balls?
Yeah, we logged it in the spreadsheet. Remember
Yeah.
that? Remember that Google sheet we implemented?
Yeah, the most ridiculous thing ever, and I
Well,
participated in that. I'm embarrassed to say.
Most ridiculous in case your game ends up the next one with Deflategate. I mean, I thought it was pretty smart personally. Okay,
Was
here's the deal.
Deflategate in college football, or was that pro?
Was
it pro event?
Deflategate necessary to? Were you qualified to talk about that? I don't know. Okay, look, we got 2 minute warning. Darren Winkley has established a Zoom link.
We've got 6 minutes.
My screen says 2 minutes.
Yeah, 1 minute 58 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. 1 minute. I got 1 minute 40 seconds. So obviously, as normal, my performance is high and above the rest of these guys. But anyways, so Darren Winkley has established the Zoom link. I put it in the chat. I'll republish it. So if you want to continue the discussion.
Hey,
Let's
Dan,
go.
can I ask you a question on the side? Is the company
Sure.
expecting us to go to the Zoom link?
Yeah, I think so.
Your pay is dependent on it. I mean, think about it. Are you dedicated to this or not? Honestly.
I was asking Daniel a question on the side.
I know, but I thought I'd chime in as the appointed.
Guys, a special, extra special edition of the Friday night virus-free virtual clinic tonight. Don't feel like all of our sessions will go this way. We are just killing it in the zone. So thanks for everybody attending, and we'll see you in the Zoom here in 30 seconds.
I hope Zoom works.
Oh, it's guaranteed. Winkley's in charge.
That's a great point. Every game I've had with Darren Winkley, which is probably, Wink, 10 by now? I mean, the games go flawless.
10. What do you mean 10? We had a whole season together.
It's not even Darren's Zoom. It's Michelle Winkley's Zoom meeting.